From the very first scribble J.G. Quintel drew at CalArts to the moment Pops Millard sacrifices himself to save the universe, I was going to feel things I wasn't ready to feel. And I was right. Because here's the confession. Regular Show isn't just a cartoon I watched. It's a cartoon that watched me grow up. I was figuring out what I wanted to do with my life when Mordecai and Rigby were avoiding doing anything with theirs. And by the time the show ended, all of us, me, them, maybe you too, had to face the fact that you can't stay 23 forever. You can't keep slacking off in the park. Eventually the universe asks something of you. So tonight, we're going to do this properly. Every era, every season. The whole thing, laid out in the order it happened. From a student film about two gas station employees getting high on candy to a cosmic battle between good and evil that spans 14 billion years. We're covering the complete Regular Show timeline. And I don't mean a surface level recap where I rattle off episode titles and you zone out after 10 minutes. I mean, we're going to sit with this thing. We're going to talk about why a show about a blue jay and a raccoon slacking off at a park became one of the most emotionally resonant animated series of its decade. We're going to trace how J.G. Quintel took his weird little CalArts projects and turned them into something that made grown adults cry when a lollipop man hugged his evil brother and flew into the sun. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here a while, you already know the drill. Get comfortable. Lights off if you can. Pillow situation sorted. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. We do these long ones pretty regularly, and they're built for exactly this kind of night. Alright, let's go back to the very beginning. Not September 6th, 2010, when the first episode aired. Further back than that, we need to start at the California Institute of the Arts, sometime around 2004 or 2005, in a room full of animation students who had no idea they were about to reshape Cartoon Network. J.G. Quintel, full name James Garland Quintel, was a student at CalArts, which, if you don't know, is basically the Hogwarts of American animation. The place has produced everyone from Tim Burton to Pete Docter to Pendleton Ward, who'd go on to create Adventure Time. And CalArts had this tradition, this chaotic, beautiful tradition, where students would throw title words into a hat, words like lollipop or candy, and they'd draw one out at midnight and then have 48 hours to make an entire short film based on whatever word they pulled. 48 hours. Think about that. You pull a word, you go to your desk, and you don't sleep until you have something to show. In the spring of 2005, Quintel pulled his word and made a short film called The Naive Man from Lollyland. And this is where Pops comes from. The short was about an ambassador, this cheerful, innocent, lollipop-headed character who loses his composure during what should be a simple, benign encounter. It's weird. It's funny. It's got that specific Quintel energy where mundane situations spiral into absolute chaos. The short won 2 awards at the 2005 Nicktoons Film Festival. The short originated from that 48-hour tradition, but Quintel developed it over months into a finished piece. 2 awards at a major festival for a student film. That should tell you something about what Quintel could do even back then. But that's only half the origin story. In 2006, some sources say the work started around then, with a finished version appearing in 2007. Quintel made another short film. This one was called 2 in the AM/PM. And look, I need to be careful how I describe this, but it's essentially about 2 slackers working the night shift at a gas station on Halloween. And after consuming some questionable candy, they start to transform. One of them turns into a blue jay. The other turns into a raccoon. I mean, come on! That's Mordecai and Rigby. Right there, in a student film that's basically about a drug trip. Quintel entered 2 in the AM/PM in the 30th annual Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation in 2007. And the DNA of Regular Show was now fully formed in 2 student projects. A naive lollipop man and 2 slackers who transform into animals. Here's what I think is so important about understanding those origins. Regular Show was never designed from the top down. Nobody at a network said, "We need a show about a park." Quintel had these characters living in his head for years before anyone gave him a budget. That's why the show always felt personal, because it was. And there's something about the CalArts pipeline that I think matters here. Quintel wasn't working in isolation. He was part of a cohort. Sam Marin, his fellow student who would go on to voice Benson, Pops, and Muscle Man, was right there in the same program. Pendleton Ward, who was developing Adventure Time from his own student films, was part of the same creative ecosystem. These people knew each other. They influenced each other. They challenged each other. And when their shows premiered within months of each other on the same network, it wasn't a coincidence. It was the logical result of a specific place and time producing a specific kind of talent. CalArts in the mid-2000s was ground zero for a revolution in American animation, and we're still living in the world that revolution created. I also think it's worth pausing on the gap between the student films and the actual show. 5 years, from 2005, when The Naive Man from Lollyland won its awards, to 2010, when the first episode aired. 5 years of Quintel developing, pitching, failing, revising, and pitching again. That's a long time to hold on to an idea. A lot of creators would have moved on, would have decided that a lollipop man and two stoner animals were a dead end. Quintel didn't. He kept refining the concept, kept finding new ways to articulate what the show was about, kept believing that these characters had a story worth telling. And when the opportunity finally came through the Cartoonstitute, he was ready. He'd been ready for years. That preparation, that stubbornness, is part of why the show felt so fully formed from episode 1. It had been gestating for half a decade. Now, Cartoon Network at this point, we're talking 2008, 2009, was in a rough spot. The network had been leaning hard into live-action programming, moving away from the animation that had defined it. CN Real, they called it. Shows like Destroy Build, Destroy, and Dude, What Would Happen? And the animation community was watching this happen with a kind of horrified disbelief. This was the network that gave us Dexter's Lab, the Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack, Ed, Ed, and Eddie. And now it was airing live-action game shows. The dark ages of Cartoon Network. That's not an exaggeration. But quietly, behind the scenes, something was brewing. Cartoon Network launched a development initiative called the Cartoonstitute, which was essentially an incubator for animated shorts. The idea was simple. Give creators a small budget to make pilot shorts, and if something clicked, develop it into a full series. Quintel pitched his concept, using the characters from both his CalArts films, and produced a pilot short for the Cartoonstitute. That pilot was essentially what would later air as the Season 2 episode, First Day. The Cartoonstitute itself was ultimately scrapped as a project, but it had done its job. Cartoon Network executives saw Quintel's short and greenlit regular show for a full series, and right alongside it, another Cartoonstitute project was getting the green light. Pendleton Ward's Adventure Time. These two shows, Regular Show and Adventure Time, would premiere within months of each other in 2010 and almost single-handedly reverse Cartoon Network's decline. They brought animation back to the network. They brought viewers back. They launched what fans and critics now call the Cartoon Network Renaissance. And I don't think that's hyperbole. When you look at what followed, Steven Universe, Gumball, Over the Garden Wall, We Bare Bears, all of that traces back to this moment, to these two weird shows from CalArts graduates who just wanted to tell honest stories in fantastical settings. But let's talk about the show itself. Let's talk about the cast that Quintel assembled, because this matters. Quintel voiced Mordecai himself. That slightly nasally, perpetually uncertain voice that always sounds like a guy who knows he should be doing something better with his life, but can't quite get off the couch. William Salyers voiced Rigby, bringing this raspy, hyperactive, almost feral energy to the character that made him feel genuinely unpredictable. Sam Marin, who'd been a fellow CalArts student with Quintel, voiced three major characters: Benson, Pops, and Muscle Man. Three completely distinct voices from one guy. Benson's high-strung fury, Pops' delicate Victorian cheerfulness, and Muscle Man's everything. And then you've got Mark Hamill as Skips. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, the man who became the definitive voice of the Joker in Batman. The animated series was now playing an immortal Yeti who fixes everything by skipping instead of walking. The casting was inspired, and the fact that most of this core group stayed together for all 8 seasons gave the show a consistency that a lot of animated series lose over time. You get used to the voices. They become the characters. By season 4 or 5, you can't imagine Mordecai sounding like anyone other than Quintel. Can't imagine Skips without Hamill's weathered growl. Can't imagine Benson's rage in any voice other than Marin's. That kind of voice casting stability is rare in animation, where schedules conflict and contracts expire and actors move on. Regular Show held its cast together for 7 years of production, and the result is a show where every character feels lived in and real in a way that goes beyond the writing. It's in the way Quintel's voice cracks slightly when Mordecai is nervous. It's in the way Celliers adds a barely perceptible quiver to Rigby's tough guy act. It's in the way Marin can shift from Benson's fury to Pops's gentleness to Muscle Man's brashness within a single recording session. These aren't just performances. They're inhabitations. Now, a quick side note about the voice talent, because I don't want to gloss over Janie Haddad Tompkins, who voiced Margaret. Margaret is the girl at the coffee shop, a Red Robin, who becomes Mordecai's long-running crush, an eventual love interest. Haddad Tompkins brings this effortless cool to Margaret that makes you totally understand why Mordecai can't form complete sentences around her. She's warm, but not overly available. Interested, but not desperate. It's a tricky balance for what could have been a flat, love interest archetype. And Haddad Tompkins makes Margaret feel like a real person with her own life happening off-screen. And while we're talking cast, Roger Craig Smith voices Thomas in later seasons. Linda Cardellini voices CJ starting in Season 3. And you've got guest voices popping up throughout the run. The show attracted serious talent because the scripts were sharp and the world was inviting. Even if you only came in for one episode, you were playing a character who mattered in a universe that felt lived in. Alright, September 6th, 2010, a Monday night, 8:15 p.m. on Cartoon Network. The very first episode of Regular Show airs. It's called The Power, and in 11 minutes, this episode establishes everything you need to know about what this show is going to be. I want you to picture the visual style for a second, because if you're lying here and you've never watched the show, I want you to be able to see it. The art style is deceptively simple. Clean lines, flat colors, a limited palette. The characters look like they could have been drawn in 5 minutes. Mordecai is a tall blue jay with a blue mohawkish crest. Rigby is a small brown raccoon who barely comes up to Mordecai's waist. They look like doodles, and that's the point. The simplicity of the art makes the escalation hit harder. When a normal-looking park suddenly has a portal to the moon, or when the sky splits open and a demon appears, the contrast between the casual art style and the insane content is where the comedy lives. Quintel understood that you don't need elaborate animation to tell a great story. You need expressive characters and good timing, and Regular Show has some of the best comedic timing in all of animation. Mordecai and Rigby are wrestling with a doll called Beef Burrito in their room above the house, because they live in a house in the park where they work, which is already an amazing detail, and they punch a massive hole in the wall. Immediate panic. Benson is going to kill them. Their solution? Somehow convince Benson to give them a raise so they can pay for the repairs. That's the kind of logic this show runs on. Not, let's fix the wall, but let's get more money so the wall situation isn't as bad. It's the logic of being 23 and irresponsible, and it's perfect. Rigby reveals he stole a magical keyboard from a wizard who was, and I quote, relieving himself in a bush. The keyboard, called the Power, can make whatever you say come true. They test it on Pops, who gives them butterscotch ripple lollipops. They use it on Benson, who agrees to give them each a raise. And then, because this is Regular Show and every mundane situation has to escalate into something insane, they accidentally send Skips to the moon. And now, Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, and Pops have to take the golf cart to the moon to bring Skips back before the keyboard's batteries die. And that's the formula. That's the show. Two slackers try to do something simple. It goes wrong. Supernatural chaos ensues. Stakes escalate absurdly. And somehow, by the end, things are mostly back to normal. But here's what makes it work. The escalation is never random. It always connects to whatever stupid decision the characters made at the beginning. The chaos is a consequence. And that's a really smart narrative engine for what looks, on the surface, like a stoner comedy for kids. Here's something else about The Power that I think people miss. The episode is also establishing the show's moral framework. Mordecai and Rigby find a shortcut, a magical keyboard that gives them whatever they want. And it works, for a while. But then it causes a bigger problem than the one they were trying to solve. The show is saying, from its very first episode, there are no shortcuts. Taking the easy way out always creates worse problems. You can use magic to avoid doing your work, but eventually, the universe will make you pay for it. That's not a preachy message. The show never delivers it as a lecture. It's just the natural consequence of the story. But it's there, embedded in the DNA of the show from day one. And if you think about it, that same principle applies to every episode of regular show. The characters try to cut corners. Reality, or some supernatural manifestation of reality, punches back. The lesson is always the same. Do the work. Be honest. Face the thing you're avoiding. The magical keyboard won't save you. I think about the people who watched that first episode in September 2010 and had no idea where this was all heading. They thought they were watching a funny little show about a park. They didn't know they were watching the first chapter of a story that would end with the death of the universe and a lollipop man choosing love over power. And can we just appreciate the setting for a minute? The park. Not a school, not a city apartment, not a spaceship. A park. A municipal park with a house, a fountain, a snack bar, some trees, and a golf cart. It's the most aggressively ordinary setting you could pick for a show. And that's exactly why it works. The park is normality. It's the baseline. And every episode starts from that baseline before launching into the stratosphere. The park grounds the show. It gives you a home to return to after whatever cosmic insanity just happened. There's a reason the house in the park becomes such an iconic location. You can close your eyes and picture it. The two-story house with the front porch. The steps where Mordecai and Rigby sit and drink sodas. The living room with the couch where they play video games. The kitchen where Benson yells at them. It's home. And for 8 seasons, it's our home too. The park staff hierarchy is also deceptively well constructed. Mr. Maillard owns the park. His son Pops is nominally in charge, but doesn't really manage anything. Benson is the actual manager. The guy who assigns tasks, enforces rules, and loses his mind when nobody listens. Skips is the maintenance guy. The one who knows how everything works and can fix anything. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost are the other groundskeepers. The colleagues who have seniority over Mordecai and Rigby and never let them forget it. And Mordecai and Rigby are at the bottom. They're the new guys. The slackers. The ones who get assigned the worst jobs and still can't finish them. That workplace dynamic, the pecking order, the resentments, the grudging camaraderie, it's universal. Everyone's worked at a place like this. Everyone's had a Benson screaming at them. Everyone's been the Mordecai and Rigby of some workplace, doing the bare minimum and hoping nobody notices. The rest of Season 1 rolled out over the fall of 2010, 12 episodes total, airing weekly on Monday nights. And these early episodes are pure, distilled regular show at its most foundational. Just Set Up the Chairs, which aired September 13th, 2010, is literally about Mordecai and Rigby being asked to set up chairs for a kid's birthday party, getting distracted, and accidentally unleashing the Destroyer of Worlds from an arcade machine. The title is the task. The episode is the catastrophic failure to complete it. Benson's line delivery in these early episodes, that barely contained rage at these two idiots who can't do the simplest job, it's incredible. Sam Marin plays Benson like a man whose blood pressure is a ticking time bomb. Caffeinated Concert Tickets, Episode 3, aired September 20th, 2010. Mordecai and Rigby want to go see Fist Pump, an 80s-style rock band, because this show lives and breathes 80s nostalgia, and they need money for tickets. So they work overtime, chugging coffee to stay awake, eventually enlisting a businessman and a sentient coffee bean to keep the caffeine flowing. They get the tickets, and then they fall asleep at the concert. That's the punchline. All that struggle, and they miss the thing they wanted. There's something so honest about that, about wanting something so badly that the effort to get it exhausts you past the point of enjoying it. Death Punchies aired September 27th and introduced one of the show's recurring mechanics, games and competitions that become literally life or death. Rigby keeps losing to Mordecai at Punchies, a playground game where you punch each other's fists, so he goes on a quest to find the Death Punch, a deadly martial arts technique. He literally seeks out forbidden power because he can't handle losing a game. And the episode ends with Rigby getting the Death Punch, using it on Mordecai, and discovering that the consequences of winning can be worse than the humiliation of losing. The escalation, from playground game to life-threatening combat technique, is the show's signature move in miniature. But beneath the comedy, you start to see how the show uses Rigby's insecurity, his constant need to prove himself against Mordecai, as a driving emotional force. It's played for comedy here. Absolutely. But this thread, Rigby's inferiority complex, his inability to accept being second best, his willingness to go to dangerous extremes rather than sit with the discomfort of failure, it's going to become one of the most important character arcs in the entire series. What starts as Rigby can't handle losing a game becomes Rigby can't handle being less than Mordecai, becomes Rigby hid his own college acceptance to stay with Mordecai, becomes Rigby goes back to school to prove he's worth something. That's a 7-season arc, and it starts right here, in the 4th episode, with a Punchies game. Free Cake on October 4th is about exactly what you'd think. Mordecai and Rigby want cake, specifically Skip's birthday cake, and they go to ridiculous lengths to get it. But the episode also starts building out Skips as a character, hinting at the immortality rituals he has to perform on his birthday. These little seeds, man. They plant them so early. Meet Your Maker on October 11th, a pun title for a show that loved pun titles, has Rigby insulting a hot dog, which leads to them being trapped inside a sentient freezer full of hot dogs who want revenge. And I know how that sounds. I know. But it works because the show commits completely. There's no winking at the camera. Within the logic of this world, angry hot dogs in a freezer is a real threat. And the fact that it all started because Rigby couldn't keep his mouth shut? That's character-driven chaos. Then we get Grilled Cheese Deluxe on October 18th, The Unicorns Have Got to Go on October 25th, which deals with Mordecai trying to impress Margaret by hanging out with cool unicorn dudes who are actually terrible, and Prank Callers on November 1st. These episodes are establishing the social world of the show. Margaret works at the coffee shop. Mordecai has a crush on her that he can't articulate. Rigby eggs him on. Benson threatens to fire them. Skips fixes things. Pops is delighted by everything. Muscle Man makes "my mom" jokes. High Five Ghost is there. Speaking of Muscle Man and his "my mom" jokes, this actually starts early. The first one shows up in the 2nd episode. Just set up the chairs. Muscle Man's format is, you know who else does something related to the current situation? My mom. And it's such a dumb joke. It's a your mom joke, but he's insulting his own mother. And everyone at the park is annoyed by it, which makes it funnier. But here's the thing. Over the course of 8 seasons, Muscle Man goes from being the most one-note character on the show to the one with the most surprising emotional depth. His wedding, his backstory, his relationship with Starla, the way he evolves from a gross punchline machine into a man who genuinely grows up. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get there. And here's a personal tangent. I think about the 80s nostalgia a lot. Regular Show is drenched in it. The music, the synthesizers, the VHS tapes, the arcade games, the montages, the hair metal references. Quintel grew up loving the 80s, and he threaded that love through every episode. The show's soundtrack is full of synth-driven cues that sound like they were pulled from an 80s action movie. The fictional bands, Fist Pump, Hair to the Throne, the Summertime Song, all have that 80s arena rock energy. And the show's approach to technology is deliberately retro. The characters watch VHS tapes, play arcade games, use cassette players. There are computers and cell phones, but the default aesthetic is analog. It gives the show a timeless quality, like it's happening in a universe where the 80s never quite ended. And I think that resonated with the audience. Both the older viewers who actually remembered that era and the younger ones who felt its appeal through the filter of nostalgia for something they never experienced. The show also has this thing with games. Video games, board games, physical games, arcade games. Almost every episode involves some kind of competition or challenge. Mordecai and Rigby are gamers at their core. Their default activity is sitting on the couch playing video games. And the show uses that as both a character trait and a narrative engine. The games they play often become the supernatural threat they have to defeat. It's a loop. Slacking leads to gaming. Gaming leads to a problem. The problem becomes a life or death version of the game itself. It's like the show is saying, the things you do to avoid real life have a way of becoming more real than you're prepared for. Rigby's Body, Episode 11, airing November 15th, 2010, takes this idea literally. Rigby's body literally separates from his consciousness because he's been treating it so badly. The body runs off to do its own thing while Rigby's mind is stuck. It's a pretty blunt metaphor. You can't abuse yourself forever and expect no consequences. But it works because the show plays it with genuine stakes. Rigby has to earn his body back. He has to show that he's willing to take care of himself. For 11 minutes, it's a silly body swap episode. But underneath, it's about self-respect, about the connection between how you treat yourself and who you become. Episode 10 of Season 1 is Dawn, which aired November 8th, 2010, and this one is important. Dawn is Rigby's younger brother, and he's everything Rigby isn't. Tall, confident, charismatic, beloved. Everyone at the park loves Dawn immediately. They think he's the older brother, and Rigby can't stand it. He's been living in Dawn's shadow his entire life, and the resentment is palpable. But the episode has this beautiful turn at the end, where Dawn reveals that he actually looks up to Rigby, that his whole confident persona is partly him trying to be as cool as he thinks Rigby is. And Rigby, grudgingly, finally gives Dawn some sugar, their family's way of showing affection. It's a small moment, but it's the first time the show shows us that Rigby's tough exterior is covering up real pain. Season 1 wraps up on November 22nd, 2010 with Mordecai and the Rigbys, an episode about our two guys trying to start a band, which of course goes horribly wrong in a supernatural way. 12 episodes total, the shortest season of the show. But the foundation is rock solid. And honestly, rewatching Season 1 now, what strikes me is how confident the show was from day one. There's no finding its footing period that a lot of animated shows go through. Quintel knew exactly what this show was. The tone is established in the first minute of the first episode and never wavers. That's rare. I also want to point out something about Season 1's structure that I think people underappreciate. 12 episodes. That's it. Most modern animated shows launch with bigger orders. Adventure Time's first season had 26 episodes, but regular shows started with 12, and I think that was actually an advantage. It meant every episode had to count. There was no room for filler, no space for experiments that didn't work, no padding. Every one of those 12 episodes is essential. Every one establishes something. A character trait, a relationship dynamic, a world-building detail. That pays off later. It's a tight first season, almost impossibly tight, and it gives the show a rock-solid foundation to build on. The other thing about Season 1 is the music. I haven't talked about the music enough, and I should, because regular show's soundtrack is one of the most distinctive elements of the show. Mark Mothersbaugh, yes, Mark Mothersbaugh, the Devo frontman, composed the original score for the show's early seasons. His synth-heavy, new wave-inflected music gave the show a sonic identity that was immediately recognizable. You could be in another room and hear the regular show soundtrack and know exactly what you were hearing. Those warm, slightly eerie synthesizer tones that played under every episode. They set a mood that was simultaneously playful and ominous. Like something fun was happening, but something weird was about to happen too. The music told you to relax and pay attention at the same time. That's a hard emotional register to hit. And Mothersbaugh nailed it. The show also used licensed music more effectively than almost any animated series I can think of. 80s pop songs, classic rock, hair metal. The characters lived in a world where the soundtrack of the 1980s was the ambient background noise. The karaoke scenes, the concert episodes, the car rides with the radio on, music was always present, always specific. Never generic. When a scene needed emotional weight, the show would deploy a perfectly chosen song, and it would elevate the moment from good to unforgettable. That's a production decision that costs money and takes effort, and Quintel made it a priority from the very beginning. Let me take a breath here, because we're about to hit Season 2, and the show is about to open up in a big way. Season 2 premiered on November 29th, 2010, just 1 week after Season 1 ended, with an episode called Hello Governor. And this season is massive, 28 episodes, more than double the first season. Cartoon Network clearly believed in this show, and they were right to. The ratings were strong, the critical response was overwhelmingly positive, and the show had already started building the kind of passionate online fanbase that would sustain it for years. Regular show memes were everywhere. Mordecai and Rigby's "Oh" celebration became iconic. Muscleman's "My Mom" was inescapable. The show had entered the cultural conversation in a way that few animated series manage in their first season. Hello Governor is a horror parody episode where Mordecai and Rigby watch a cheesy old British horror movie about an evil ghost taxi, and Rigby becomes genuinely terrified. The movie is called Hello Governor. It's this grainy, low-budget, black and white affair about a haunted taxi in London. And despite being objectively terrible, it gets under Rigby's skin. He can't sleep. He's paranoid. He sees the evil taxi everywhere. He's jumping at shadows, screaming at car horns, refusing to go outside. The episode is essentially about how irrational fear works, how something objectively silly can become genuinely terrifying when your brain decides it's real. And for a show premiering its second season, this was a smart choice of opener because it showcased the show's range. Hello Governor is a comedy episode, but it's also a genuine horror episode. The scares work, the tension is real. And the resolution, Rigby confronting his fear through an even more absurd scenario, is both cathartic and funny. And it's played for laughs, sure, but the show is already doing this thing where it uses genre conventions, horror, action, sci-fi, as a vehicle for exploring character. Rigby's fear isn't about the taxi, it's about his vulnerability, the fact that he acts tough, but is actually the most fragile person in the group. Season 2 is where the show's relationship dynamics start to really crystallize. It's Time, which aired January 3rd, 2011, is one of the first episodes to really push Mordecai's feelings for Margaret into dark territory. Mordecai gets jealous when Rigby starts flirting with Margaret, because remember, Mordecai has spent his entire time at the park barely able to form sentences around this girl. And here's Rigby, who doesn't even care about Margaret romantically, just casually chatting her up. And Mordecai can't handle it. He can't articulate his feelings, can't confront Rigby like an adult, can't just say, "Hey man, I have a thing for her. Could you back off?" Instead, he does something passive-aggressive and destructive. He destroys all the clocks so Rigby will be late for his date. And then, in one of the most shockingly dark moments in the show's early run, Mordecai and Rigby end up on a microwave, flying through a time vortex. Rigby taunts him, and Mordecai pushes Rigby off. And Rigby disintegrates, dies, graphically. For an 11-minute cartoon on Cartoon Network, this was wild. Father Time rewinds things, and Rigby comes back. But that moment, Mordecai's jealousy driving him to something genuinely destructive, that's foreshadowing for the entire Mordecai love interest saga that will define seasons of this show. Season 2 also gives us the episode My Mom, which aired January 31st, 2011, a full episode dedicated to Muscle Man's catchphrase. The gang is sick of his "my mom" jokes, but it turns out Muscle Man has tons of friends who love them. And the episode is funny, but it also starts establishing that Muscle Man has a whole life outside the park. He's not just the annoying coworker. He has people who care about him. Layers under all that green. Let me talk about Do Me a Solid, which aired May 2nd, 2011. This is Eileen's first major appearance. She'd had a cameo in Brain Eraser earlier in the season, but Do Me a Solid is where she enters the show as a real character. Eileen works at the coffee shop with Margaret. She's a mole, short, glasses, kinda nerdy, and she has a massive crush on Rigby. Rigby couldn't care less. He barely registers her existence. And that dynamic, Eileen quietly, patiently caring about Rigby while he's oblivious, is going to become one of the sweetest and most satisfying slow burn romances in all of animation. But we're years away from that payoff. Right now, she's just the awkward girl at the coffee shop. Season 2 also has a bunch of baby ducks. And I need to talk about this one because it spawns one of the show's longest running recurring bits. Mordecai and Rigby are cleaning the park fountain, one of the rare occasions they actually do their job, and they find a bunch of baby ducks in the water. The ducks imprint on Rigby. They follow him everywhere. He tries to pawn them off on someone else, but nobody is cool enough to take care of them. Eventually, an estranged poacher steals the ducks, and Mordecai and Rigby have to rescue them. And the ducks? They combine into a giant duck warrior and fight the poacher, because of course they do. These baby ducks come back multiple times across the series. They grow into a bunch of full-grown geese. Wait, no, that's different. The baby ducks return in later seasons and eventually get their own half-hour special, Brilliant Century Duck Crisis Special, in Season 6, which is an unhinged anime parody where the ducks and geese form rival mecha robots, and fight on the moon. I'm not joking. The show takes a throwaway gag about ducks in a fountain, and, over the course of 4 seasons, turns it into a full-blown anime homage, complete with transformation sequences and dramatic monologues. That kind of commitment to bit escalation is what makes regular shows special. Nothing is ever truly a one-off. Everything can come back. Everything can matter. Gravesites has Mordecai and Rigby trying to show a scary movie at a cemetery, which goes exactly as well as you'd expect. And Appreciation Day is about them getting snubbed for recognition plaques and then fabricating false accomplishments in the park's records. That one is pure workplace comedy. The anxiety of not being appreciated. The temptation to lie about your contributions. The inevitable fallout when you get caught. I've worked jobs where I've felt exactly like Mordecai and Rigby feel in that episode. Overlooked, undervalued, and angry enough to do something stupid about it. Over the Top, airing May 23rd, 2011, is where we first see Skip's immense power and his complex relationship with death. Skips accidentally kills Rigby while arm wrestling because Skips is so strong he doesn't always know his own strength, and then has to literally fight death to bring Rigby back. And the show plays this completely straight. Skips wrestling death for his friend's soul. Mark Hamill delivering these lines with this world-weary gravitas that makes you forget you're watching a cartoon about a Yeti. This episode is a masterclass in how regular show could seamlessly shift between comedy and something genuinely mythic. There's also Skunked near the end of the season, where Rigby gets sprayed by a skunk while playing Roadkill Bingo. Yes, they have bingo cards for Roadkill. And starts slowly transforming into a were-skunk. It's a horror comedy episode, basically a werewolf story but with a skunk. And it's one of those episodes where the genre play is so committed that you forget you're watching a cartoon on Cartoon Network. The tension is real. The body horror, while stylized, is genuinely unsettling, and the resolution requires Rigby's friends to help him, which reinforces the show's constant theme. You can't handle your problems alone, and Do or Diaper is a classic Season 2 Mordecai episode. Muscle Man bets Mordecai that he can't kiss Margaret within a week. If Mordecai succeeds, Muscle Man wears a diaper. If he fails, Mordecai wears the diaper. It's crude and silly, and exactly the kind of low-stakes bet that 20-somethings make when they're bored at work. But the episode mines genuine anxiety from it. Mordecai wants to kiss Margaret. He's been wanting to for ages, and now there's a deadline, a timer on his romantic paralysis. And he still can't do it. The diaper is a metaphor. It's humiliation. It's what happens when you can't act on your feelings. You end up wearing your failure for everyone to see. The season also includes First Day. Remember, this was originally the Cartoonstitute pilot, now expanded into a full episode. It aired June 20th, 2011, and it was the most watched episode of Season 2, pulling in 2.634 million viewers. The episode shows Mordecai and Rigby's first day at the park, how they got hired, their first encounter with Benson's rage. It's origin story stuff. And the fact that Cartoon Network pulled it from the vault and aired it as a proper episode shows how well it still worked. The extended director's cut version has a different energy than the original Cartoonstitute short. It's looser, more confident, more willing to let moments breathe. You can feel the show's growth just by comparing the two versions. Season 2 wraps on August 1st, 2011 with Karaoke Video, where Mordecai and Rigby get drunk on the energy of a karaoke bar and start trash-talking Benson, Pops, and Skips in their performance, which gets recorded on video. And now they have to destroy the tape before anyone sees it. It's a perfect encapsulation of early regular show. A stupid decision, spiraling consequences, and an 11-minute scramble to undo the damage before Benson fires them. I want to pause here and acknowledge something about Season 2 that I think gets lost in discussion of specific episodes: the sheer density of world building. In 28 episodes, the show introduces death as a recurring character, establishes the coffee shop as a secondary location, develops Eileen as a key player, hints at Skip's immortality, fleshes out Muscle Man's personality beyond the catchphrase, introduces the concept of the baby ducks returning, and develops the Mordecai-Margaret dynamic from pure crush to something resembling a real connection. That's an enormous amount of narrative construction in a single season. Each episode is self-contained, but together they create a web of relationships and mythology that the show will draw on for years. And the viewership reflects this. Season 2 consistently pulled strong numbers, with the most watched episode hitting 2.634 million viewers. For a cartoon in a 8:15 p.m. Monday time slot, those are excellent numbers. The show was building an audience fast, and Cartoon Network knew they had something special. Let me also give credit to the show's boarding process. Regular Show used a storyboard-driven approach. The writers and storyboard artists collaborated closely, with the visual storytelling being developed alongside the scripts rather than after. This meant the visual gags, the timing, the character animations were all baked into the creative process from the start. It's why the show's comedy is so tightly constructed. The people drawing the jokes were the same people writing them. That kind of integration doesn't happen by accident. It requires a creator who trusts their artists and a studio structure that supports collaboration. Quintel built that structure, and it's one of the reasons the show maintained such a consistent level of quality across 8 seasons. But here's what I want you to notice as we transition from Season 2 to Season 3. The show is getting more confident with its emotional beats. The comedy is still front and center, but the character moments are landing harder. The relationships between these people, and I do think of them as people, even though they're a blue jay, a raccoon, a gumball machine, a lollipop man, a yeti, and a green dude, those relationships are starting to feel real. And that's the trick that Regular Show pulls off better than almost any other animated comedy. It earns its emotional moments by making you laugh first. Season 3 premiered on September 19th, 2011, and it's a whopper, 39 episodes. 39. That's almost an episode a week for most of the year. The production team was working at a relentless pace, and somehow the quality didn't dip. If anything, the show got sharper. The jokes landed harder. The emotional beats cut deeper. The supernatural escalations got wilder. This is the season where Regular Show goes from great cartoon to all-time great cartoon. And the centerpiece of that argument is one episode, Eggcellent. But I also want to acknowledge something about Season 3 that I think gets overlooked. This is the season where the show's world really expands. In Seasons 1 and 2, the universe was mostly contained to the park and the coffee shop. Season 3 starts sending the characters further afield. Road trips, different dimensions, the afterlife. Heaven and hell both make appearances in this show, by the way. Death is a recurring character, a scythe-carrying, British-accented skeleton who plays games for people's souls. The Guardians of Eternal Youth show up regularly. They're these floating baby heads who grant wishes and manage cosmic power, and they're obsessed with playing games in their hot tub. Gary, a synthesizer-playing alien who exists on another planet, becomes part of the expanding mythology. The show's universe is getting bigger, episode by episode, and Quintel manages it like a world builder who's playing the long game. Stick Hockey, the Season 3 premiere, kicks things off with Benson showing a softer side. He makes a deal with Mordecai and Rigby about a stick hockey table, goes back on his word, feels guilty, and comes back to help them when things go south. It's a small arc, 11 minutes, but it shows the Benson-Mordecai-Rigby dynamic evolving. In Season 1, Benson would have just yelled. In Season 3, he feels bad about it. He's learning. They're all learning. Nobody announces it. You just notice. But first, let me set the stage. Season 3 opens with the gang in full swing. The park dynamics are locked in. Mordecai's crush on Margaret is now an established running thread. The show is experimenting with longer storylines and bigger set pieces. Terror Tales of the Park, the 4th episode, airing October 10th, 2011, introduces what will become an annual tradition. A Halloween special structured as an anthology, with each character telling a scary story. These Halloween episodes would run for 6 years, from Season 3 all the way to Season 8, and they became some of the most beloved entries in the series. The first one is notable for a small detail. In one of the shorts, a picture of Eileen is visible inside a haunted house, implying that Rigby has been keeping her photo without telling anyone. Subtle, but the show is planting seeds. Camping Can Be Cool, Episode 5, takes Mordecai, Rigby, Margaret, and Eileen on a camping trip. And I want to linger on this one, because it's quietly one of the most important episodes in the entire Rigby-Eileen arc. Up until this point, Eileen has mostly existed in the context of the coffee shop. She's the girl behind the counter, Margaret's friend, the one who has a crush on Rigby that he ignores. But camping can be cool takes her out of that setting and puts her in the wild, and she transforms. She's incredible at camping. She knows constellations by name. She can identify animal tracks. She's resourceful, smart, capable in ways that nobody expected. And Rigby notices. He doesn't say anything. This is Rigby. He'd rather die than admit he's impressed by someone, especially someone he's been dismissing. But he notices. There's a moment in the episode where Rigby watches Eileen solve a problem, and his expression shifts. Just for a second. Just enough to see that something is changing in how he sees her. The slow burn romance inches forward by a millimeter. And that's what's so smart about how the show handles Rigby and Eileen. It doesn't force anything. It doesn't have a dramatic moment where Rigby suddenly realizes his feelings. Instead, it gives us dozens of tiny moments. A glance here, a surprised expression there, a small act of kindness disguised as indifference that accumulate over seasons. By the time Rigby admits he and Eileen are dating in season 6, it doesn't feel sudden at all. It feels inevitable, like it was always heading this way, and Rigby was just the last person to figure it out. That's how good slow burn writing works. You plant seeds so small that the audience barely notices, and then one day, without any fanfare, there's a tree, and everyone looks at it and says, "How did that get there?" And the answer is, it was growing the whole time. You just weren't watching closely enough. Wrap It Up features one of the show's most memorable set pieces. Pops gets insulted by a rap group called Crew Crew, and Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops challenge them to a rap battle. And Pops, sweet, gentle, naive Pops, delivers a genuinely devastating rap performance. It's absurd and wonderful, and it shows you how the writers understood that Pops' innocence was his superpower. He doesn't play by the rules of the game because he doesn't even know what the rules are. And then we get to Eggcellent, Season 3, Episode 17, aired February 27th, 2012. And I need you to understand something. This episode won a Primetime Emmy Award, an Emmy, in the short format animation category. An 11-minute cartoon about eating a giant omelet won an Emmy, and it deserved to. Here's what happens. There's a restaurant that has a challenge. If you can eat a massive 12-egg omelet in under a certain time, you win a trucker hat. That's it. The prize is a trucker hat. And Rigby, who is allergic to eggs, decides he's going to win that hat. Because Rigby cannot resist a challenge. Because Rigby will literally risk his life for something completely pointless. And that's not a character flaw the show is ignoring. It's the whole point. Rigby eats the omelet and has a severe allergic reaction. He goes into a coma, and suddenly this silly premise about a hat becomes the most emotionally intense episode the show had done up to that point. Mordecai is devastated. His best friend is lying in a hospital bed because of a stupid eating challenge, and there's nothing he can do. Except, Mordecai decides he's going to win that hat for Rigby. He's going to go back to that restaurant and finish the challenge that Rigby started. And the episode becomes about Mordecai's love for his friend. Not romantic love. Not complicated love. Just the simple, stubborn, irrational love of a best friend who says, "I'm going to win you that dumb hat because you wanted it, and you're going to wake up and it's going to be there." The training montage. The actual challenge. The way Mordecai pushes through when his body is giving out. It's played with the intensity of a Rocky movie. Over an omelet. Over a hat. When Mordecai wins and puts the hat on Rigby's head in the hospital, and Rigby wakes up. Look, I'm not going to say I cried, but I'm not going to say I didn't. That's regular show at its absolute best. Taking something absurd and making it feel genuinely real. And the Emmy win for Eggcellent. That matters. Regular show went on to receive 6 Primetime Emmy nominations total over its run, but this was the one win. And it validated something that animation fans had been saying for years, that animated shows deserve the same critical recognition as live action. That an 11-minute cartoon can achieve the same emotional depth as an hour-long prestige drama. The Television Academy agreed, at least this once, and Eggcellent deserved it. Think Positive is another Season 3 gem that I want to highlight because it's such a great Benson episode. Pops, frustrated that Benson keeps ruining his fun by screaming at Mordecai and Rigby, tells Benson that he'll be fired if he yells at them again. And Benson has to not yell. He has to hold it in. He tries meditation. He tries deep breathing. He says "Om" over and over, while Mordecai and Rigby are being their usual incompetent selves. And you watch Benson's face. And remember, this face is a gumball machine with a crank on the side. You watch the gumballs inside him literally vibrate with suppressed rage. It's so visually clever. The comedy is in the constraint. And when Benson finally explodes, when the dam breaks and he unleashes all that stored fury in a single cosmic scream that literally shakes the earth, it's cathartic. For him and for us. Sometimes you just need to yell. Slam Dunk pushes the Mordecai-Margaret thread forward in a quieter way. Margaret asks Mordecai to make her a website, which gives him an excuse to spend time with her, but he gets drawn into a basketball competition with Muscle Man and High Five Ghost instead. It's such a perfect distillation of Mordecai's problem. He wants to be close to Margaret, but he keeps getting pulled into competitive nonsense with his park friends. His priorities are in constant conflict. He wants love, and he wants to goof off, and those two things keep interfering with each other. Season 3 also pushes the Mordecai-Margaret dynamic forward significantly. Picking Up Margaret and Bad Kiss, the season finale, airing September 3rd, 2012, are all about Mordecai finally making his move. Bad Kiss specifically deals with Mordecai's attempt to kiss Margaret, and the anxiety and terror of that first kiss. The whole episode is about that moment, wanting it, fearing it, messing it up. And for anyone who's ever been 20-something and completely paralyzed by the prospect of kissing the person they like, this episode is almost too real. The supernatural elements are there. There's always some magical complication, but the emotional core is pure, unfiltered romantic anxiety. Busted Cart takes Mordecai, Rigby, and Benson on a road trip. They've wrecked the cart and have to get it to a dealership before the warranty expires. And road trip episodes are always revealing in sitcoms, because they force characters who normally have the buffer of their daily routine into close quarters. You learn things about Benson in this episode. His frustration, his loneliness, the way he actually does care about these two idiots, even as they drive him insane. Benson's character development is one of the show's most underrated achievements. He starts as angry boss, and slowly, over 8 seasons, becomes one of the most sympathetic characters in the cast. Let me pause here on Benson for a second, because I think he deserves it. Benson is a gumball machine, a literal gumball machine, who manages a park. And he is always angry at Mordecai and Rigby. His head turns red when he's furious. His go-to threat is, "You're fired." And on the surface, he's the antagonist of the status quo, the boss who won't let the heroes have fun. But the show does something really smart with Benson. It makes him right. Mordecai and Rigby are terrible employees. They don't do their work. They cause supernatural disasters. They cost the park untold amounts of money. Benson's rage isn't irrational. It's completely justified. And that tension between the audience's natural sympathy for the slackers and the legitimate frustrations of the guy trying to keep things running is what keeps the workplace dynamics interesting for 8 years. Plus, Benson has his own life. He's a drummer, and not just a casual drummer, a genuinely talented, passionate musician who chose the stability of park management over the uncertainty of a music career. The show reveals this in episodes like This Is My Jam, where Benson uses his drumming skills to defeat a supernatural song that's stuck in Mordecai's head. There's a scene where Benson sits down at a drum kit, and his whole demeanor changes. The anger drains away. The tension leaves his body. He's not Benson the manager anymore. He's Benson, the artist. And when he plays, it's with a joy and freedom that we almost never see from him during regular park hours. That contrast tells you everything about what the job costs him. Every day he manages the park, he's not doing the thing that makes him happiest. That's the adult compromise the show is depicting. You do the responsible thing, and you give up a piece of yourself in the process. This Is My Jam is from Season 2, by the way. It aired in 2011, and it's the first real hint of Benson's musical ability. Later, in the Season 4 episode 150 Piece Kit, the show fully develops this thread. But even in Season 2, you can see the writers planting the seed. They knew Benson was more than his anger. They just waited for the right moments to show you. He has a love life too. The show introduces Audrey in Weekend at Benson's, which aired during Season 3, and later Pam in Season 7. And through these relationships, we see Benson's vulnerability, his fear of rejection, his awkwardness, the way he wants to be liked but doesn't know how to relax enough to let it happen. He has a love life. The show introduces Audrey in Weekend at Benson's, which aired during season 3, and later Pam. He has insecurities, past failures, moments of genuine vulnerability. When Mordecai and Rigby accidentally knock him unconscious in Weekend at Benson's and have to puppet him around at a party, Weekend at Bernie's style, because this show loves its movie references. The comedy works because we actually care about Benson's dignity. We don't want him to be humiliated, even as the situation is hilarious. And the episode introduces Audrey, his neighbor, who he's been trying to impress. So there's a romantic thread woven into the slapstick. Mordecai and Rigby are puppeteering unconscious Benson through a social situation while he's trying to look cool for a woman he likes. Layers upon layers, man. I should also mention that Benson's characterization is one of the most surprisingly nuanced depictions of workplace authority in all of television, animated or otherwise. Most shows present the boss character as either a villain or a buffoon. Regular Show makes Benson both sympathetic and frustrating in equal measure. He's the guy who cares too much about rules in a world where rules are constantly being broken by supernatural forces. He's the guy who takes his job seriously in a place where nobody else does. And instead of making that a joke at his expense, the show gradually reveals that his seriousness comes from a place of genuine care. He's not trying to control people. He's trying to hold things together, and he's failing. Constantly. Spectacularly. But he keeps trying. That's heroic, in its own quiet, unglamorous way. Let me also mention Fuzzy Dice, because it's another one of those episodes that showcases the show's ability to turn nothing into everything. The gang tries to win a pair of fuzzy dice for Pops' birthday. That's the premise. Fuzzy dice. And it becomes this epic heist action adventure involving shady carnival operators and high-stakes games. The commitment to treating Pops' birthday gift with the gravity of a military operation is pure Regular Show. And it works because we care about Pops. We want the Lollipop Man to have a good birthday. We want the fuzzy dice on his wall. Such small stakes. And yet they feel enormous because of how much the characters care. Okay, Season 4. We're rolling now. The show is a bona fide hit. It's pulling millions of viewers. It's a cornerstone of Cartoon Network's lineup alongside Adventure Time. And Season 4 opens with one of the most ambitious episodes the show had ever attempted. I should probably set the context for where Cartoon Network was at this point, because it matters. By fall 2012, the network had fully committed back to animation. CN Real was dead and buried. Regular Show and Adventure Time were the twin pillars holding everything up, and new shows were launching around them. The amazing world of Gumball had started. Steven Universe was in development. The Renaissance was in full bloom. And Regular Show, now in its 4th season, was one of the shows that had earned this new golden age. Quintel and his team had proven that you could make a show that appealed to kids, teenagers, and adults simultaneously. That you could be weird and sincere. That you didn't have to dumb things down. And the network rewarded them with bigger episode orders and more creative freedom. Exit 9B aired October 1st, 2012. This is a half-hour special that serves as both the season premiere and a love letter to the show's continuity. Here's the setup. The park has been destroyed. Everyone except Mordecai and Rigby has been brainwashed by a mysterious bearded man. And when Mordecai and Rigby investigate, they discover that the bearded man is GBF Jr., the son of Garrett Bobby Ferguson, the giant floating head from the Season 1 episode High Score, who exploded in a wave of brain matter after our heroes beat his high score. And what GBF Jr. does is open a portal from which every villain Mordecai and Rigby have ever defeated comes pouring out. The hot dogs from Meet Your Maker, the unicorns, the Night Owl, Susan, the Destroyer of Worlds, all of them. It's a clip show and a battle episode and a continuity celebration all at once. And for a show that was mostly episodic, where the status quo reset at the end of each 11-minute adventure, this was a statement. This was the show saying, everything that happened mattered. Every weird encounter, every escalated situation, every villain they stumbled into, it all left a mark on this world. Exit 9B also establishes a pattern for Season 4. Bigger episodes, wider scope, higher stakes. The show is growing up alongside its characters. Season 4 has 37 episodes, running from October 2012 all the way through August 2013. And it's in this season that the show starts experimenting with different tones and formats more aggressively. Blind Trust, for instance, puts Benson in a position where he literally has to trust Mordecai and Rigby to get him down a mountain. The entire episode is about Benson learning to let go of control, which is his defining struggle. Caveman has the guys thawing out a frozen caveman and trying to civilize him, which is a fun concept episode, but also low-key examines what it means to live in the modern world versus a simpler time. A bunch of full-grown geese brings back the bird conflict thread from the Baby Ducks episode, now with aggressive adult geese terrorizing the park. And picking up Margaret is deceptively simple. Mordecai wants to give Margaret a ride to the airport, but it's charged with all the unspoken feelings between them. Every minute in that car is loaded. 150-piece Kit, airing in October 2012, is one of the best Benson episodes in the entire series, and I need to dwell on it. Benson's old hair metal band, Hair to the Throne, comes to town. They're playing a concert at the park, and there's a dispute. The band claims that a drum machine played a complex drum solo on their first album, not Benson. Benson insists he played it himself. He was the drummer. He was there, and nobody believes him. So Benson has to get his legendary 150-piece drum kit, this massive, absurd, stage-spanning instrument, and prove once and for all that he played the solo. The band sabotages him. They literally try to destroy his drums. And Mordecai and Rigby, who spend most of their time being the bane of Benson's existence, step up. They tie up the band's drum machine and clear the way for Benson to play. And Benson plays. And it's incredible. Sam Marin voices this scene with so much emotion. The relief, the vindication, the joy of proving that you are who you say you are. When the solo ends and the band finally admits they were wrong, they offer Benson a spot back in the group. And Benson says no. He's content with his job at the park. He chose this life. Not because he couldn't do anything else, but because this is where he belongs. That's a profound choice for a character we mostly see as the angry boss. Benson had talent. Benson had dreams. Benson was a rock star, and he walked away from it because the park mattered more. Because the people here, even the ones who drive him crazy, mattered more. If you've ever left something you loved for something that needed you, Benson's choice will resonate. Speaking of growing up, Season 4 gives us the first regular show Christmas special. The Christmas special, airing December 3rd, 2012, introduces Quilgan, an evil elf and former lead toy designer for Santa Claus who had created an empty present box powered by dark magic. The box conjures whatever the opener desires most, but it brings out the worst in anyone who touches it. Quilgan stole it, escaped in Santa's sleigh, and now Mordecai and Rigby have to destroy the box before Quilgan uses it to destroy Christmas forever. It's action-packed and genuinely exciting, and it showed that the show could do holiday specials without losing its edge. But the real emotional gut punch of Season 4 comes at the very end. Stake Me Amadeus. The season finale. August 12th, 2013. I've been talking about Mordecai and Margaret since the beginning of this thing. The will they won't they that defined the first 3.5 seasons. The crushing anxiety, the missed signals, the almost kisses. And in Stake Me Amadeus, Mordecai finally does it. He takes Margaret to a nice restaurant. He asks her to be his girlfriend. Officially, for real. And Margaret says she can't. She holds up an acceptance letter. She got into her dream college, Milton University. She's leaving. She can't be with him. And she cries and runs out of the restaurant. And Mordecai is left sitting there, heartbroken. The question still hanging in the air unanswered. The restaurant is still around him. The food is still on the table. People are still eating. The world doesn't stop because your heart breaks. Regular show understood that. It understood that the most devastating moments in life happen in ordinary places. In restaurants, in cars, on porches. There's no dramatic background music in real heartbreak. There's just silence and the sound of someone walking away. And I want to mention the context of this episode too. Stake Me Amadeus wasn't just the season finale. It was the end of a chapter. Janie Haddad Tompkins would still voice Margaret in later seasons. But the Margaret as love interest era was over. 3.5 seasons of Mordecai working up the courage to confess. And the answer was, I can't. Not, I don't want to. Not, I don't feel the same way. Just, I can't. She had to choose between Mordecai and her future. And she chose her future. And that's the right choice. It's the choice that any good advice giver would tell you to make. But being right doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And I remember watching this and thinking, oh, this is real. This isn't a cartoon miscommunication that'll be resolved next episode. Margaret is leaving. The love interest is gone. And Mordecai just has to deal with it. Like a real person. Like all of us who've had to watch someone we care about leave for something they needed to do. The show could have dragged this out. Could have had Margaret stay. Could have manufactured a way to keep the status quo. But it didn't. It let the breakup happen. It let it hurt. And that decision, that willingness to let the characters experience genuine loss, is what separates regular show from most of its peers. I also want to flag something that happens structurally in Season 4 that I think is underappreciated. The show starts telling stories that have consequences across multiple episodes. Early regular show was almost entirely episodic. You could watch any episode from Season 1 without knowing anything about the others, and you'd be fine. But by Season 4, there are threads. Mordecai's relationship with Margaret builds across episodes. GBF Jr.'s revenge in Exit 9B references events from Season 1. The Christmas special creates lore about Santa that gets referenced later. The show is building a continuity, slowly and carefully, without sacrificing the standalone appeal of individual episodes. It's a hard balance to strike, and the writers nail it. You can still enjoy any episode on its own, but if you've been watching from the beginning, you get more. You see the connections. You feel the weight of accumulated history. And that's what makes Stake Me Amadeus land so hard. It's not just one bad date. It's the culmination of 3.5 seasons of yearning, anxiety, missed opportunities, and tiny victories. When Mordecai sits in that restaurant, rejected, you feel every single episode that led to this moment. Alright, Season 5, 37 episodes. Premiered September 2nd, 2013, with Laundry Woes. And this is the season of heartbreak, growth, and one very important New Year's Eve kiss. Mordecai is a mess, and the show is brave about showing it. The premiere, Laundry Woes, has him finding Margaret's sweater in the laundry and planning to return it to her at college, which sounds like a reasonable thing to do until you realize he's using the sweater as an excuse to see her. He's manufacturing reasons to not let go, and the episode knows this. It doesn't judge him for it, but it doesn't pretend it's healthy either. That sweater is a security blanket, and Mordecai has to give it back, literally and metaphorically. Margaret is gone. He's doing the thing that anyone does after a breakup, trying to pretend he's fine while clearly not being fine. The show doesn't rush him through this. It lets him sit in it. And the early Season 5 episodes have this underlying sadness to them, even when the A-plots are still wacky supernatural adventures. Mordecai's heart isn't in it. He's going through the motions. And then comes New Year's Kiss. It's a New Year's Eve party. Mordecai doesn't want to be there, but he goes, wearing a mask. It's a masquerade party, and he meets someone, a cloud girl. They talk. She's funny. She's cool. She understands what it's like to have a date that didn't work out. And as midnight approaches, surrounded by other couples kissing, she suggests they make the best of it. They kiss, and it's nice. And then the masks come off and they recognize each other, because this is CJ, Cloudy J. She'd appeared once before, way back in the Season 3 episode, Yes Dude, Yes, where Mordecai briefly went on a date with her before realizing Margaret might actually be interested in him. He ditched CJ for Margaret. And now, after losing Margaret, fate has literally put CJ back in his path. CJ is shocked. She runs away. And the Mordecai love triangle, the defining relationship arc of the show's middle seasons, is now fully in motion. But I want to linger on CJ as a character for a moment, because she deserves it. CJ, Cloudy J, is a cloud person. She's anthropomorphic weather, and her design is brilliant. She's made of white and gray clouds. She's got this cool, laid-back energy. And when she's happy, she's literally sunny. And when she's angry, she turns into a thunderstorm. Her emotions are externalized as weather patterns. That's a visual metaphor that works on every level. It's funny, it's expressive, and it lets the animators go wild. CJ's storms are some of the most dynamic sequences in the show. Lightning, wind, hail, all because she found out something she didn't want to know. It's not subtle. It's not trying to be. It's a cartoon saying, emotions are powerful forces that can destroy things. Pay attention to them. CJ also represents something new for Mordecai. Margaret was his ideal, the girl he put on a pedestal, the one he could barely talk to. CJ is his equal. She games with him, hangs out with him, challenges him. Their relationship is built on friendship first, which makes it more functional than anything Mordecai had with Margaret. And that's what makes its eventual dissolution so painful. This wasn't a crush gone wrong. This was a real relationship between two people who genuinely cared about each other, undermined by unresolved baggage. I have complicated feelings about the Mordecai-Margaret-CJ triangle, and I think a lot of fans do too. On one hand, it's realistic. People don't have clean love lives. They overlap and get messy and hurt people accidentally. On the other hand, the show dragged it out across 3 seasons, and there were points where Mordecai's inability to make a decision or communicate clearly crossed the line from relatable to frustrating. But I think that frustration was intentional. Quintel and the writers weren't trying to make Mordecai look good. They were showing what happens when a fundamentally decent person is bad at relationships. And that's most people in their 20s, honestly. Season 5 also gives us some of the show's best standalone episodes. The Thanksgiving special, airing November 25th, 2013, was the show's first half-hour Thanksgiving episode, pulling in over 3 million viewers, the most watched episode of the entire season. Mordecai and Rigby accidentally ruin Thanksgiving and have to save it before their families arrive. It's classic regular show escalation, but the family stakes give it extra weight. And then there's Skip's story. Season 5, Episode 22. This is the one I'd been waiting for. We'd had hints about Skip's past for years. The immortality, the birthday rituals, the skipping instead of walking. But this episode finally tells us the whole truth. Skips wasn't always called Skips. He was Walks. He was born sometime around the 18th or 19th century, and in his younger years, he had a friend named Samson and a girlfriend named Mona. He had a life. And then Clorgbane the Destroyer showed up, a cosmic bully who the Guardians of Eternal Youth had been trying to contain. And in a fight, Clorgbane inadvertently killed Mona. She died. The love of Skip's life, gone. The Guardians offered Skips a deal. They'd grant him immortality so he could fight Clorgbane whenever the Destroyer returned, which happened every 157 years. But the cost was eternal life, never aging, never dying, never moving on. And Skips took the deal. He changed his name from Walks to Skips as a way of starting over, moving differently through the world. Every skip is a reminder of who he used to be and the sacrifice he made. I need to stop here and just say, Skip's story has a 9.7 rating on IMDb for an animated series episode. That's absurdly high, and it tells you how much this episode resonated with people. The backstory is genuinely tragic, but it's told with restraint. There's no manipulation, no swelling music telling you how to feel, just a centuries-old Yeti, calmly recounting the worst thing that ever happened to him, while Mordecai and Rigby listen in silence. The silence is what gets me. These two guys who never shut up, who always have a joke or a complaint, they just listen. They understand that some stories deserve silence, and Mark Hamill plays this with such quiet gravity. There's a weight to Skips in every scene after you know his backstory. Every time he fixes the golf cart, or offers sage advice, or doesn't react to the latest supernatural crisis, it's because he's seen everything. He's centuries old. He's lost the person he loved most, and he just keeps going, keeps helping, keeps skipping. That's beautiful and devastating in equal measure. Season 5 also introduces Thomas the Goat as a recurring intern at the park. He's this meek, unremarkable character who just sort of exists in the background of episodes, fetching coffee, doing grunt work, getting ignored by everyone. Nobody thinks twice about him. He's park furniture. But remember what I said earlier about this show? Nothing is ever truly a throwaway. Everything can come back. Everything can matter. Thomas is going to matter a lot. But that's a Season 6 story. Expert or Liar is a fun Season 5 episode where Rigby gets caught lying on a hidden camera game show and has to redeem himself. It's a lighter episode, but it touches on Rigby's pathological relationship with dishonesty. He lies about everything: his abilities, his knowledge, his achievements. And the show gently suggests that this isn't just a character flaw, it's a defense mechanism. Rigby lies because the truth, that he's insecure, that he feels inadequate, that he's afraid of being exposed, is too painful. And this show, more than any other animated comedy I can think of, understands that the most annoying things about a person are usually the things they're using to protect themselves from pain. Real Date, the season 5 finale airing August 14th, 2014, officially brings Mordecai and CJ together as a couple. They go on their first real romantic date. And despite supernatural interference, because it wouldn't be regular show without it, they end the episode as a genuine couple. Margaret is gone. CJ is here. The show has turned a page. I want to pause on season 5 and make a broader observation. This is the midpoint of the series. We're halfway through, and the show has already accomplished something remarkable. It made a cartoon about 20-something slackers into a show about the terrifying process of growing up. Mordecai is learning that you can't just wait for things to work out. Rigby is starting to show cracks in his bravado, hints that his cool guy act is covering up real insecurity about his intelligence, his achievements, his worth. Benson is confronting the gap between who he wanted to be and who he is. Muscle Man is about to become something nobody expected. And Pops, sweet, innocent Pops, is living on borrowed time in a way that nobody, including us, fully understands yet. The themes of regular show have always been about growing up. Responsibility, friendship, the fear of being left behind, the anxiety of not knowing what you're supposed to do with your life. But by season 5, those themes aren't subtext anymore. They're text. The characters are aging. They're making real choices with real consequences. The park can't protect them forever. I want to do a meta moment here, because I've been narrating this timeline for a while now, and I want to be honest about something. Doing a video like this, tracing an entire show from start to finish, it changes how you see the show. When you watch regular show week to week, or even binge it over a couple months, you experience it as a series of moments. Funny moments, sad moments, wild moments. But when you line them all up in order and look at the trajectory, you see something different. You see intention. You see a creator and his team making deliberate choices about who these characters are becoming. The progression from season 1 Rigby to season 5 Rigby isn't accidental. The way Benson slowly softens isn't a coincidence. The show was always telling a story about change. It just told it so gradually that you didn't notice until you stepped back and looked at the whole thing. And that's what we're doing tonight. Stepping back, seeing the shape of it. Stay with me. We're heading into the back half now, and things are about to get complicated. In the best possible way. Season 6, 31 episodes. Premieres October 9th, 2014, with Maxon and Relaxin. And this is the season where the Mordecai love situation becomes genuinely painful. CJ is Mordecai's girlfriend now, and CJ is great. She's a cloud person. Literally, she's made of clouds. And when she gets angry, she generates actual storms. And she's funny and tough, and she genuinely cares about Mordecai. Linda Cardellini voices her with this perfect balance of cool and vulnerable. And the show does a good job, at first, of showing why this relationship works. But then Margaret comes back. And look, I have a theory about why this part of the show frustrates people, and it has to do with pacing. Seasons 1 through 4 spent a long time building the Mordecai-Margaret relationship. We invested in it. We rooted for it, and then Margaret left, and we grieved with Mordecai. And then we got CJ, and we invested in that too. And then season 6 asks us to go back to square one, to relitigate the Margaret question, to watch Mordecai be torn between two people again. And the audience, understandably, felt whiplash. We'd moved on. The show had moved on. And now it was pulling us back. But here's my counter-argument. That's exactly what happens in real life. You move on from someone. You start something new. And then the old person reappears. And suddenly, all the moving on you thought you'd done evaporates. Feelings don't follow a linear path. They circle back. They ambush you. The show wasn't being lazy by bringing Margaret back. It was being honest about the circular nature of love and heartbreak. Margaret returns to the area, and suddenly the show has a love triangle that it's not entirely sure how to handle. And I think this is where some fans started to get frustrated, because Mordecai's behavior becomes genuinely hard to defend. He can't be in a room with Margaret without acting weird. He can't be fully present with CJ, because part of him is still hung up on Margaret. And CJ can see it. She's not stupid. She's a storm cloud who can literally sense atmospheric disturbances. And the disturbance is her boyfriend's unresolved feelings for his ex. The Christmas episode, Merry Christmas Mordecai, brings things to a head. At Eileen's Christmas party, Mordecai finds out Margaret will be there, and he panics. The tension between him and Margaret has been building all season, and at this party, they kiss in front of everyone, and CJ sees it, or rather, CJ hears about it, or senses it. The details vary, but the result is the same. The betrayal is out in the open. Sad Sacks follows, airing January 9th, 2015, with Mordecai trying to get back together with CJ. And she takes him back, tentatively, because she cares about him. But the damage is done. The trust has a crack in it, and that crack widens over the course of the season. 1000th Chopper Flight Party, airing March 12th, 2015, is where things really spiral. It's a celebration for Margaret's dad, a news helicopter pilot hitting his 1000th flight. Mordecai goes to the party, and CJ encourages him to go, trying to show that she trusts him. But when she shows up and sees Mordecai laughing and talking with Margaret, CJ's cloud powers activate. A storm breaks out. She nearly destroys the party, nearly kills people, in a jealous rage. And then she's horrified by what she's done, and she runs away in tears. Here's the thing about CJ. The show is making a really uncomfortable point. CJ's jealousy is justified. Her anger is valid. But her reaction, generating a destructive storm, makes her dangerous. And the show doesn't let that slide. It doesn't say, well, she had a right to be upset, so the destruction is fine. It shows that valid emotions can still lead to harmful actions. And that's a level of moral complexity you don't expect from an animated comedy. Season 6 also gives us The Real Thomas, which is a half-hour special that completely recontextualizes a minor character. Thomas the Goat had been a recurring character since Season 4, the park's unpaid intern, a quiet, milquetoast goat who nobody paid much attention to. He was just there, background furniture. And then The Real Thomas reveals that Thomas isn't Thomas at all. He's Nikolai, a Russian spy, sent to America to infiltrate the park and steal it for Russia using massive rockets, because apparently the Russian government wanted to improve their parks and decided the best strategy was to steal an American one. I know how that sounds. I know. But the episode plays it with genuine tension and real stakes. Rigby discovers the truth. Benson's new girlfriend turns out to also be a Russian operative, and the park literally gets launched into the air by rockets. And Thomas, Nikolai, has to choose his country or his friends, and he chooses his friends. He turns the rockets around, saves the park, and then has to go on the run, wanted by both the United States and Russia. He thanks the park crew for being the only real friends he ever had, and he disappears. It's such a regular show move. Take a nothing character that nobody was watching and give him the most dramatic, high-stakes episode of the season. It rewards the attentive viewer while also working as a standalone action thriller for anyone tuning in fresh. And the fact that Thomas's departure actually matters. He doesn't come back. He's genuinely gone. Gives the episode real weight. Consequences. Again. This show loves consequences. Brilliant Century Duck Crisis Special is also in Season 6, and it's the third installment of the Baby Ducks saga. Remember those ducks from Season 2? They're back, and they've brought full-grown geese with them, and they need the park crew's help to defeat a pair of lawyers from the Playco Toy Company who have ironclad merchandising contracts. The episode is a full-blown anime parody. The intro sequence is animated in an anime style. There are transformation sequences, giant robot battles on the moon. The moon gets sliced in half. The baby ducks have a long-lost teenage brother named Andy. It's unhinged. It's a love letter to every mecha anime ever made, filtered through the show's absurdist lens. And the fact that it exists, that regular show went from Clean the Fountain in Season 2 to robot battles on the moon in Season 6, all spawned from the same set of ducks. is proof of the show's ability to grow organically from its own continuity. But let me talk about the other major storyline in Season 6, because it doesn't get enough credit. Muscle Man and Starla. Remember way back when Muscle Man was introduced in Season 1 as the annoying "my mom" joke guy? The green, shirtless, crude dude who nobody took seriously? The character whose main contributions to any scene were gross-out humor and a catchphrase? Well, by Season 6, the show has been quietly building his relationship with Starla, his girlfriend, who's every bit as rough-edged as he is, into something genuinely touching. And I need to trace this development because it's one of the show's greatest achievements. Starla was first introduced in the Season 2 episode, Muscle Woman. At the start of that episode, she dumped Muscle Man because he couldn't express himself. He was devastated, like genuinely, deeply upset. And the other characters noticed, because behind the bravado, behind the "my mom" jokes, Muscle Man was a guy who felt things deeply and had no idea how to communicate them. The episode ended with him learning to express himself to Starla, and they got back together. From that point on, Muscle Man and Starla's relationship became a quiet through line of the series. They broke up and got back together. They fought. They supported each other. Starla encouraged him during a hot dog eating contest against death in Last Meal. They had the messy, imperfect, loud, passionate kind of relationship that doesn't look glamorous from the outside, but works because both people are genuinely committed to each other. And the show never asked us to find their relationship aspirational in a conventional sense. It just asked us to see it as real. Two people who loved each other, flaws and all. In the end of Muscle Man decides to propose to Starla. But first, he goes through this whole process of shedding his Muscle Man persona, all the crude jokes, the showing off, the bravado, to become Mitch Sorenstein, the real person underneath. And Starla's response is perfect. She tells him she doesn't want him to change. She doesn't want Mitch Sorenstein without Muscle Man. She loves the whole package, the "my mom" jokes, and the sweetness underneath them. She says yes. And I'm sitting here watching a proposal between a green cartoon man and his equally green girlfriend. And I'm emotional about it, and I'm not even sorry. Dumped at the Altar closes Season 6 on June 25th, 2015. It's the wedding episode. Muscle Man and Starla get married. And at the wedding, two major things happen. First, Rigby casually reveals to Mordecai that he and Eileen have been dating for months, in secret. And Mordecai had no idea. This is both hilarious and meaningful. While Mordecai was agonizing over Margaret and CJ, getting his heart broken and breaking hearts, Rigby, who started the show as the most immature character, quietly built a healthy, functional relationship with someone who genuinely understood him. No drama, no love triangle, just two people who figured it out. That's growth. That's real, quiet, unglamorous growth. Second, Mordecai and CJ break up. At the wedding, Mordecai makes a speech where he admits he doesn't know who his soulmate is. He doesn't say it's CJ. He doesn't point in her direction. He doesn't even mention her. And CJ feels it. She cuts him off, gives back the charm bracelet he gave her, and leaves in tears. And it's devastating, because CJ didn't do anything wrong. She loved him. She tried, and he couldn't get there. I need to linger on this wedding scene for a moment longer, because there's a detail I love. As Muscle Man and Starla celebrate their wedding, they put a turducken in a fryer, and it explodes and destroys Benson's car. And that's the last beat of the episode. The wedding is beautiful. The speeches are emotional. Two breakups happen. Lives change forever. And a turducken destroys a car. That's regular show. Beauty and absurdity. Side by side. Always. The show never lets things get too heavy without a turducken to bring you back. And it never lets things get too silly without a breakup to remind you these characters are real. The Mordecai, CJ, Margaret storyline is the most divisive element of regular show. And I think that's partly because it's so honest about how messy love is in your 20s. Nobody is really the villain. Margaret followed her dreams. CJ gave her heart to someone who wasn't ready. Mordecai wanted to be a good person, but kept making it worse. These are real problems real people have. And the fact that a cartoon addressed them without easy answers is one of the bravest things the show ever did. I also want to highlight how Season 6 handles the end of the Mordecai romance saga in terms of what it says about the show's audience. By this point, the fanbase was deeply invested in who Mordecai would end up with. Team Margaret versus Team CJ was a genuine online debate, with people writing essays and making video arguments for their preferred pairing. And the show chose neither. It ended both relationships. It left Mordecai single. That took real courage from the writers, because they knew it would upset parts of the fanbase no matter what. Choosing Margaret would have felt like regression. Choosing CJ would have felt like settling. So they chose growth. They chose the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the answer to who should I be with is nobody right now. That's the kind of answer that a 20-year-old doesn't want to hear. But it's the answer that a 27-year-old knows is right. And Regular Show, which had been growing up alongside its audience, was now firmly in 27-year-old territory. Season 6 ends with a wedding, a breakup, a secret relationship revealed, and a turducken explosion. If that's not the most Regular Show ending possible for a season, I don't know what is. Now, before we get into Season 7, I want to take a detour. Because in the middle of all this, in 2015, something else happened. Regular Show, the movie. The film was released digitally on September 1st, 2015, hit DVD on October 13th, and had its television premiere on Cartoon Network on November 25th, 2015. And the movie goes big. Time travel, a destroyed future, a villain named Mr. Ross, who turns out to be Mordecai and Rigby's former science teacher, angry because Rigby cost his volleyball team the championship. Classic Regular Show logic. The fate of the timeline rests on a high school volleyball grudge. But the movie's real emotional core is a secret that Rigby has been keeping from Mordecai. When they were in high school, they both applied to their dream college university. Rigby got in, Mordecai didn't, and Rigby, unable to face going to college without his best friend, sabotaged his own acceptance. He chose Mordecai over his own future, and then he spent years acting like he was the dumb one, the dropout, the screw-up, because admitting the truth would mean admitting that Mordecai wasn't good enough to get in on his own. When Mordecai finds out, he's furious. The betrayal of the lie, the years of Rigby pretending, the realization that his best friend sacrificed his own success to stay with him, it's a lot. And the movie earns every bit of that emotional payoff because we've spent 5 seasons watching these two. We know what this friendship means. We know the dynamic. And now we know it was built on a lie that was also an act of love. The movie resolves the conflict. Mordecai eventually forgives Rigby. They defeat Mr. Ross. They save the timeline. But the revelation changes the texture of their friendship going forward. Rigby isn't the dumb one. He never was. He's the one who loved his friend too much to leave him behind. That hits different when you think about where Rigby's going to end up. But we'll get there. Actually, let me stay with the movie for another moment, because there's a structural thing I want to point out. The movie was released between seasons 6 and 7, and it functions as a bridge. It resolves the biggest secret in Mordecai and Rigby's friendship, which clears the way for both characters to evolve in the final 2 seasons. Without the movie's revelation, Rigby's decision to go back to school doesn't land the same way. He's not just getting his diploma for Eileen. He's making up for the diploma he threw away when he sabotaged his own college acceptance. He's correcting the biggest mistake of his life, the one he made out of love, but that defined him as a failure. The movie reframes Rigby's entire character. He was never dumb. He was never a loser. He was a guy who gave up everything for his best friend and then had to live with the consequences. And going back to school is him finally saying, I deserve better than the story I told myself about who I am. And here's a tangent. This is something I think about with a lot of animated shows, not just Regular Show. The question of when to deploy a movie. Adventure Time did it much later, with Distant Lands specials that came after the show ended. Steven Universe did it as a coda, Steven Universe Future. Regular Show dropped its movie right in the middle of the run as a turning point, and I think that was the right call. The movie doesn't feel like an add-on or a cash grab. It feels essential. It answers a question the show had been asking since episode 1. Why is Rigby the way he is? And the answer changes everything. Season 7, 36 episodes, premiered June 26th, 2015. Actually the day after the Season 6 finale, which is an unusual scheduling choice, with Dumptown, USA. And this season opens with something the show has never done before. Mordecai, completely single, with no love interest on the horizon. CJ is gone. Margaret is out of the picture as a romantic option, and Mordecai is devastated. He ends up in Dumptown, USA, which is literally a town full of guys who got dumped and can't move on. They sit around in bathrobes watching sad movies and eating junk food. Rigby has to drag him out of there before Benson fires them both. And this is the show's version of rock bottom for Mordecai. He's been defining himself by his romantic pursuits for 6 seasons, and now he has nothing. No crush, no girlfriend, no prospect. Just himself. And I think this is one of the most important transitions in the series, because Season 7 is the season where Mordecai finally starts figuring out who he is outside of who he's dating. Season 7 also resolves Margaret's arc in a way I think is really mature. Local news legend, airing early in the season, shows Margaret pursuing her journalism career. She wants to host a weekly segment on the local news. She's building her own life, separate from Mordecai, separate from the coffee shop, separate from being someone's love interest. And the show lets her do that. Margaret isn't defined by Mordecai's feelings for her anymore. She's her own person with her own ambitions. That's a significant narrative choice for a character who spent 3 seasons mostly existing as the object of Mordecai's desire. Benson gets his own romantic storyline too. Pam I Am has Benson developing a crush on one of the scientists involved in a dome experiment at the park, and he tries to sneak her a bucket of chicken wings as a way of asking her out. It's so endearingly awkward. Benson, the manager, the authority figure, the guy who yells at everyone, and he's standing outside a dome with a bucket of chicken wings, trying to muster the courage to talk to a girl. It humanizes him in the most mundane, wonderful way. And Rigby Goes to Prom is exactly what it sounds like. Rigby asks Eileen to prom as part of his high school re-enrollment, but he has to sneak his dad's car out of the garage to get there. It's a coming-of-age episode for a character who's technically already an adult, and that's the joke and the point. Rigby is having the high school experiences he never got to have the first time around. Prom, graduation, school dances. He's living the teen movie 15 years late. And Eileen goes along with all of it because she understands that this isn't just about her. It's about Rigby reclaiming the life he gave up. Look, this is also a personal tangent, but I think a lot of people go through this. That period in your 20s where you realize that romance isn't going to save you, where you stop looking for a person to complete you and start trying to complete yourself. Season 7. Mordecai is doing that work. Quietly, without fanfare, he's painting more. He's being a better friend. He's showing up for his job. It's not dramatic, and that's the point. Growth usually isn't. Meanwhile, Rigby is experiencing his own version of growing up. He's been secretly going back to high school to get his diploma. Remember? Rigby is a high school dropout. He never graduated. And for years, that was just a character detail, a punchline about how lazy and aimless he was. But now, dating Eileen, who's educated, ambitious, and has a plan for her life, Rigby feels the gap. In the Eileen plan, Rigby learns that Eileen has this detailed plan for her future, and he's terrified because he doesn't have one. So he starts attending classes at night school, not because anyone told him to, but because he wants to be someone Eileen can be proud of. And when Eileen finds out she'd been hurt because he kept disappearing without explanation, she tells him she's proud. She tells him she likes him for who he is, not for a diploma. But Rigby keeps going anyway, because it's not just about Eileen anymore. It's about him, about proving to himself that he can do something hard, that the dropout, the screw-up, the guy who failed at everything can finish what he starts. And honestly, Rigby's arc might be the best character arc in the entire show. It's so gradual that you barely notice it happening. He goes from the most irresponsible character in Season 1 to the one who quietly, stubbornly becomes the person he always had the potential to be. No grand gesture. No single moment of transformation. Just small choices, made over and over, to be a little better than he was yesterday. And I think what makes Rigby's arc resonate so deeply is that it's the opposite of the redemption arcs we're used to seeing in media. There's no single dramatic catalyst, no death of a loved one that triggers a sudden transformation, no rock-bottom moment where he hits the floor and bounces back. Rigby's growth happens the way real growth happens, incrementally, inconsistently, with setbacks and regressions, and days where you're worse than you were the day before. Some episodes, Rigby is the same old Rigby, selfish, competitive, short-sighted. Other episodes, you see the new version peeking through, the one who cares about Eileen's feelings, who shows up for his friends, who finishes what he starts, and those two versions coexist. Because that's what becoming a better person actually looks like. You don't become a new person overnight. You carry the old version with you, and you try, every day, to let the new version make a few more decisions than the old one. Eileen's patience with Rigby also deserves analysis. She doesn't push him. She doesn't give ultimatums. She doesn't say change or I'm leaving. She's just present. She shows up. She's interested in who he actually is, not who she wants him to be. And that quiet, steady acceptance is what creates the space for Rigby to change on his own terms. There's a lesson in that, I think, about how the people who help us grow the most are often the ones who demand the least, who just show up and let you be who you are. And somehow, in the warmth of that acceptance, you start wanting to be better, not for them, for yourself, because they showed you it was possible. Let me also circle back to Mordecai for a second, because Season 7 does something interesting with him that I glossed over. In the absence of a love interest, Mordecai starts painting, like actually painting. Not as a hobby, not as a distraction, as a pursuit. The show has always hinted that Mordecai has artistic talent. He doodles. He has an eye for design. But in Season 7, it becomes something more. He's finding his voice, not through a relationship, not through a job, but through art. And when the finale reveals that Mordecai becomes a professional artist, a painter who meets his wife at an art gallery, you realize the show was setting this up quietly for years. The guy who spent 6 seasons defining himself by who he was dating found himself through what he could create. That's a beautiful reframe. It says, you're not who you love, you're what you make. Season 7 builds to its finale, Rigby's Graduation Day Special, a half-hour episode that aired June 30th, 2016. Rigby is finally graduating from high school. He has to give a speech on a TV show called Inspire America, and it needs to be memorable. And there's this great tension where Mordecai is jealous, actually jealous, that Rigby is getting this moment of success, which is a callback to their entire dynamic. For years, Mordecai was the responsible one, the one who was supposed to have his life together. And now, Rigby is the one on stage, graduating, while Mordecai is still figuring things out. And Mordecai has to sit with that, has to be happy for his friend, even when it makes him feel small. Eileen's college graduation happens on the same day, and nobody shows up for it. That detail kills me. Everyone's focused on Rigby, the TV show, the spectacle, and Eileen, who did everything right, who planned and worked and earned her degree, graduates to an empty room. It's the show's quiet commentary on how the world celebrates certain kinds of achievement while ignoring others. Eileen doesn't complain. She doesn't make it about herself, because that's who she is. Gary's synthesizer is another Season 7 highlight that I want to mention because it ties into the show's expanding cosmic mythology. Mordecai and Rigby accidentally unplug cables from an old synthesizer, and they have to travel to the planet Synthos with skips to reconnect them and bring Gary, the synthesizer player, back to life. On Synthos, they discover that Gary isn't a criminal as they'd been told. He's the rightful king of the planet, who vanished 200 years ago. In his absence, a tyrant named David took over and outlawed anything disharmonious. It's a world-building episode that expands the show's universe while also telling a self-contained adventure story. And it's a reminder that regular show's world extends far beyond the park. There are whole civilizations out there with their own histories and conflicts, all connected to the characters we know. The Dome Experiment episodes also deserve a mention. The park gets enclosed in a dome as part of a scientific experiment, which creates a claustrophobic dynamic and forces the characters into even closer proximity than usual. It's a Season 7 thread that builds slowly and pays off in interesting ways. And it also introduces new characters who become important as the season progresses. But the most important thing about Rigby's Graduation Day Special is how it ends. The episode concludes with the park, the actual physical park, being launched into space. The entire park crew, plus Eileen, are on board. Earth is behind them, space is ahead, and everything changes. Because Season 8 isn't regular show anymore. Season 8 is regular show in space. And look, I want to acknowledge how wild that is. How unprecedented. Imagine if, in the last season of The Office, the entire Dunder Mifflin building got launched into orbit, and the final season was about the employees dealing with alien threats, while Michael Scott discovered he was the prophesied defender of the galaxy. That's basically what regular show did. And it worked. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. Because the show had spent 7 seasons training us to accept escalation. We'd been conditioned. A show about a park? Sure. A show about a park where weird stuff happens? Of course. A show about a park where cosmic stuff happens? Yeah, we're used to it. A show about a park that's now in space because the characters have to prepare for an interdimensional war? Yeah, honestly, that tracks. That follows logically from everything that came before. There's also something thematically appropriate about the final season being set in space. The park was safety. The park was routine. The park was the place where you could avoid growing up because nothing ever really changed. And then the park left Earth. The safety net vanished. The characters are literally floating in the void, untethered from everything familiar. That's what growing up feels like. You're in space. You're far from home. The ground you stood on isn't there anymore, and you have to figure out who you are without it. Let me catch my breath here, because we're entering the endgame, and it's going to take everything we've built over 7 seasons and aim it at the sun. Literally. Season 8 premiered September 26th, 2016, with one space day at a time, and it ran for 27 episodes until January 16th, 2017. This is the shortest final season of a long-running animated show I can think of. Just a few months, whereas previous seasons had stretched across 9 months to a year. The compressed timeline gives the season an urgency that the show never had before. There's no filler. Every episode is either advancing the Pops mythology or deepening character relationships in preparation for the end. The show knows its ending, and it's spending its remaining time wisely. The season is subtitled Regular Show in Space, and the entire thing takes place off Earth. The park is floating through space. The characters are stranded, and the season transforms from an episodic comedy into something approaching a serialized epic. The premiere episode, One Space Day at a Time, establishes the new status quo immediately. The park crew is adrift, trying to figure out how to survive in a context they never prepared for. There's no manual for this. No skips fix-it solution. They're genuinely lost. And the early episodes deal with the practicalities of being in space, resource management, alien encounters, the psychological strain of displacement. The crew has to learn to work together in a way they never had to on Earth. Because on Earth, you can always walk away. You can go home, close your door, avoid the coworker who annoys you. In space, there's nowhere to go. You're stuck with each other. And that forced proximity strips away the pretenses. The characters become more honest with each other, more vulnerable, more real. It's like a pressure cooker for character development. But it quickly becomes clear that there's a larger story being told. Because Pops is acting strange. Pops is having nightmares. Pops is more powerful than anyone realized. And someone, or something, is coming for him. Let's talk about Pops. We need to talk about Pops. Because his arc is the spine of the entire series, even though you don't realize it until the final season. Pops Maillard, the Lollipop Man. Sweet, naive, perpetually delighted by butterscotch ripple lollipops. For 7 seasons, Pops was the show's innocent. The character who reacted to every situation with childlike wonder. Who called everyone good show. Who seemed to exist in a simpler, gentler world than everyone around him. He was comic relief, sure, but he was also the heart of the park, the person who made everything feel safe. And then, Season 8 reveals the truth about who Pops really is. Pops was not born on Earth. He's not a normal lollipop man. He's Mega Cranus, a being from the planet Lollyland. As an infant, he crashed to Earth in an asteroid, where he was found by Mr. Maillard, himself a lollipop man, who was working as a meteor fragment salesman. Maillard adopted the baby, named him Pops because he looked so old even as an infant, and bought a local park to give his son a safe, normal environment to grow up in. The park, our park, the park where the whole show takes place, was purchased specifically to protect Pops. Everything in this show happened because a father wanted to keep his son safe. I mean, come on. Stop and think about that for a second. The entire show, every episode, every adventure, every moment of Mordecai and Rigby goofing off instead of working, happened in a park that was purchased by a father to protect his alien son from a cosmic destiny. Mr. Maillard didn't buy a park because he was a businessman. He bought a park because he found a baby in space and wanted to give that baby a normal life. The park was a cocoon, a bubble of normalcy around the most extraordinary being in the universe. And every character who worked there, every friendship that formed, every crisis that was resolved, it all happened because of one father's love for one child. That recontextualizes the entire series. Every episode where Pops was just hanging around the park, being sweet, being innocent. He was there because his father built a cage of normalcy around him. And that's beautiful and tragic in equal measure. But Pops isn't just a lost alien child. He's the chosen one, the embodiment of pure good. He has a twin brother named Anti-Pops, also known as Malum Kranos, who is the embodiment of pure evil. And every 14 billion years, the two brothers are fated to battle for the fate of the universe. Every single time, their perfectly balanced powers result in a stalemate, and the universe resets. Everything, every life, every planet, every star is destroyed and recreated in an endless cycle. The Big Bang itself is just the universe rebooting after Pops and Anti-Pops fight to a draw. This has happened countless times. Billions of cycles. The universe has been born and destroyed over and over, and nobody knows it except the beings old enough to remember. And now, in this cycle, Anti-Pops has decided to break the pattern. He's going to kill Pops before their fated battle. He's going to end the cycle permanently by erasing Pops from existence, which will allow him to destroy the universe for good with no reset, no new beginning, just nothing. I need to just sit with that for a second. Regular show went from two dudes slack off at a park to the cosmic battle between good and evil that determines whether existence itself continues. A show where the first episode was about a magical keyboard sending someone to the moon ended with the literal origin of the Big Bang being explained through a family drama between Lollipop brothers. And somehow, that escalation doesn't feel unearned. And here's why. Because the escalation has been happening all along. Think about it. Season 1, magical keyboard sends Skips to the moon. Season 2, Skips fights death for Rigby's soul. Season 3, the show wins an Emmy for an episode about an omelet. Season 4, every villain returns through a portal. Season 5, we learned Skips is centuries old and sacrificed everything for immortality. Season 6, a park intern turns out to be a Russian spy with rockets. Season 7, the park gets launched into space. Season 8, the universe itself is at stake. Every season raised the stakes just a little bit more. Like boiling a frog, and I don't love that analogy, but it works. We were so accustomed to each new level of escalation that the jump from park comedy to cosmic epic felt natural because it was never one jump. It was 100 small steps, taken over 7 years, each one feeling right in the moment. Because the show spent 7 seasons building these characters, making us love them, making us invest in their small lives. So that when it reveals those small lives are actually the latest iteration of an eternal struggle between creation and destruction, the stakes are personal. We're not afraid for the universe in the abstract. We're afraid for Mordecai, and Rigby, and Benson, and Skips, and Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost, and Eileen. We're afraid for them. The Ice Tape is one of the crucial Season 8 episodes, revealing more of Pop's past. Pops is desperate to learn about himself. He can't remember anything before he was 2 years old. The crew works to uncover an ice tape that contains information about his origins. Meet the Seer pushes the mythology further, as the gang searches for a cosmic being called the Seer who can explain Pop's destiny. And through all of this, the show is doing something incredibly smart. It's giving every character their moment. Muscle Man and Starla have already gotten married. Rigby and Eileen are solid, growing together. High Five Ghost has Celia, his girlfriend from the postcard, who he reconnected with after they'd agreed to wait 4 years to see if they were still single, like something out of a rom-com. She'd gone to Prague to study. They'd communicated only by postcard, because neither had a phone. And when she came back, they picked up right where they left off. It's one of the most quietly romantic subplots in the show. Meanwhile, the show is doing something beautiful with Eileen. In Season 8, she's a full main character, no longer a supporting player, no longer Rigby's girlfriend. She's part of the crew. She's in space with everyone else. She's contributing to the mission. She's problem solving. And her relationship with Rigby has become the emotional anchor of the show. While Mordecai and Margaret were always about drama and anxiety, Rigby and Eileen are about comfort and trust. They just work. They make each other better without trying to change each other. It's the kind of relationship you want. The kind where you can be exactly who you are, and that's enough. The show also gives us important moments with High Five Ghost and Celia during this stretch. Remember, Fives and Celia had this incredibly romantic setup. They met years ago, agreed to wait 4 years to see if they were still single, and reconnected when she sent him a postcard. That's the stuff of a Nicholas Sparks movie, except one of them is a ghost, and the other seems completely unfazed by this. Their relationship in Season 8 is steady and warm, providing a contrast to the cosmic chaos happening around them. Even the Terror Tales of the Park tradition continues. Season 8 gives us the 6th and final Halloween anthology episode, maintaining the tradition even in the middle of an intergalactic crisis. Because some things should be constant, some things should be annual. There's comfort in that. As the season progresses, the crew trains Pops for his destined battle. They try everything to prepare him. But Pops is Pops. He's gentle, he's kind, he doesn't want to fight. He especially doesn't want to fight his brother. And that reluctance, that core of goodness that makes Pops who he is exactly what makes him the chosen one, and exactly what makes this battle so agonizing. The universe needs him to fight, but fighting goes against everything he is. The scene where Pops watches his friends training him, where he sees how much they care, how hard they're working to prepare him for something he might not survive, is one of the quietest and most powerful scenes in the entire series. No dialogue, just Pops watching his friends. The friends who don't fully understand what's happening, who can't possibly grasp the cosmic scale of what Pops is about to face, but who show up anyway. Because that's what you do. You show up. Even when you're scared. Even when you don't understand. You show up for the people you love. I think about my own friendships when I watch those scenes. The times when someone I cared about was going through something I couldn't fix, and all I could do was be there. You feel helpless. You feel small. But you stay. And sometimes staying is the bravest thing you can do. Let me talk about Anti-Pops for a moment. He's voiced by Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger himself, which is a brilliant casting choice. Anti-Pops looks like a dark mirror of Pops. Same shape, same build, but with black coloring and an aura of malevolence. And what makes him terrifying isn't his power, though he's immensely powerful. It's his certainty. He's been fighting this battle for an eternity. He's watched the universe reset over and over. He doesn't have doubt. He doesn't have mercy. He just wants it to end. He wants oblivion. And there's something almost sympathetic about that exhaustion, even as you understand that what he wants is the destruction of everything. A regular epic final battle. 3 parts. Aired January 16th, 2017 on Cartoon Network at 6 p.m. Watched by over 1.3 million viewers. Part 1 drew 1.33 million. Parts 2 and 3 each pulled 1.37 million. The most watched episodes of the entire 8th season. The series finale of Regular Show. Let me set the scene one more time. It's January 2017. Regular Show has been on for over 6 years. The audience has grown up with these characters. Kids who started watching in 2010 are now teenagers. Teenagers who started watching are now in their 20s. The show's audience aged alongside its characters. And now, on a Monday in January, everyone is gathered for the end. And look, I've been building to this for a long time. So have the characters. So has the show. 8 seasons, 244 episodes, 7 years of television. It all comes down to this. The park crew, everyone we've loved for all these years, assists Pops in his final confrontation with Anti-Pops. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. Mordecai and Rigby, who started this show unable to set up chairs. Benson, who spent 8 seasons trying to keep things from falling apart. Skips, who's been fighting cosmic battles since before any of them were born. Muscle Man and Starla, newlyweds who came to space on what might be the worst honeymoon in history. High Five Ghost, who's been quiet but loyal from day one. Eileen, who wasn't even a park employee but showed up anyway because her people needed her. All of them, together, facing the end of everything. The battle is epic in the literal sense. Cosmic. The fate of existence hangs in the balance. And Pops, who has spent the entire season struggling with his destiny, who doesn't want to fight, who just wants everyone to be happy, makes his choice. He doesn't defeat Anti-Pops with power. He doesn't overwhelm him with force. That's what every previous version of Pops did, and it always resulted in a stalemate and a reset. Instead, Pops does the one thing that has never been tried in the billions of years of this cycle. He hugs his brother. Pops hugs Anti-Pops. And for just a moment, just a flicker of a second, Anti-Pops hesitates. The malevolence wavers. The certainty cracks. And in that moment, Pops pushes both of them into the sun. Pops sacrifices himself. He dies. The chosen one, the embodiment of pure good, the lollipop man who called everyone Jolly Good Show, who was afraid of the dark and delighted by butterscotch. He gives his life to break the cycle. And because it's a sacrifice, not a battle, the universe doesn't reset. For the first time in infinite history, the cycle is broken. Existence continues. Everyone lives. Everyone except Pops. I want to describe this scene more carefully, because if you haven't watched it, if you're lying here in the dark and this is your first encounter with this story, I want you to feel it. Pops, surrounded by the chaos of the final battle, sees Anti-Pops across the void, his brother, his mirror image, the being who wants to destroy everything. And instead of powering up for one more fight, instead of channeling his cosmic energy into one last attack, Pops walks toward him, arms open, not clenched fists, open arms, and he wraps his arms around Anti-Pops. He hugs the embodiment of evil. He hugs his brother, and Anti-Pops doesn't know what to do. For an eternity, for billions of years across infinite cycles, the response to Pops has been combat. Power against power. Force against force. Nobody has ever just held him. The moment of confusion, of vulnerability, is enough. Pops uses it to push them both toward the sun, and the last thing we see of Pops is his face, peaceful, as he and his brother fly into the light. The show cuts to a tape, an old VHS recording of Pops at the park, laughing, doing a silly dance. The crew watches it together, and they cry, and we cry, because the most powerful being in the universe was also the most innocent. And he saved everything by doing the one thing nobody ever tried, showing love to the thing that wanted to destroy him. Listen, I'm not going to pretend I was ready for that when it aired. I don't think anyone was. I remember the silence in the online communities that night. The Reddit threads, the Twitter posts. People weren't memeing. People weren't joking. People were processing. A cartoon character they'd grown up with. A lollipop man who said, "Jolly Good Show," and was afraid of the dark, had just sacrificed himself to save the universe. And it hurt. It hurt like losing a real person, because in every way that mattered, Pops was real. He was real to us. He'd been part of our lives for 7 years. We'd watched him at birthday parties and Halloween specials and Christmas episodes. We'd laughed at his naivete and been warmed by his kindness. And now he was gone. And the universe he saved would never know his name. The idea that this goofy, sweet, seemingly simple character was secretly the most important being in the universe, and that his final act would be one of love rather than violence. That's storytelling at its finest. Quintel and his team set up this ending from the moment they introduced Pops in a student film in 2005. 12 years of building toward a lollipop man choosing to hug evil rather than fight it. And it cost him everything. But the show doesn't end there, because regular show has always been about what comes after. We flash forward 25 years. 25 years since Pop's sacrifice. 25 years since the park came back to Earth from space. And we see what everyone has become. Muscle Man and Starla moved into a better trailer in the park. They had children. Many children. Eventually including a daughter shown in the final scene. The "my mom" joke guy became a dad. A devoted, present, caring dad. If you told Season 1 viewers that Muscle Man would end up as the show's most complete family man, they would have laughed you out of the room. But he earned it, every step of the way. High Five Ghost and Celia got married. They became DJs, touring DJs, playing shows in Prague, which was a callback to where Celia had been studying when they first met. They had a son, a ghost-human hybrid. Fives found his person and his purpose, and both involved joy. That feels right. Benson became the owner of the park after Mr. Maillard's death. He married his girlfriend Pam. They adopted 5 cats and a pig, and he kept the park running. He kept the place going that Maillard had bought to protect Pops, even after Pops was gone. That's Benson's whole character in one detail. The man who screamed about responsibilities his whole life turned out to be the one who shouldered the biggest responsibility of all, keeping the legacy alive. Skips continued working at the park. He switched from jeans to jean shorts, an incredibly specific and funny visual detail for an immortal being. It's the show's way of saying, even someone who's lived for centuries still makes small changes, still adapts, still decides that, you know what? Jean shorts are more comfortable. The jorts are Skip's version of growth. Centuries of wisdom, and his major life change in 25 years is his choice of pants. That's hilarious and perfect, and somehow deeply touching. He'll keep going. He always does. Centuries pass, and Skip skips on, carrying Mona's memory and Pop's sacrifice and the weight of everything he's seen. I hope he finds peace. I don't think he needs to. Eileen and Rigby got married. They have 2 young adult daughters. Rigby, the high school dropout, the irresponsible one, the guy who spent the first 3 seasons of this show contributing nothing but chaos and complaints, became a husband and a father. And he did it by actually growing up, by going back to school, by learning to be present, by choosing every day to be a little better than the version of himself that would have been easy to stay. Eileen was right to bet on him. She saw who he could be before he did, and he became that person. Let me pause on Benson's ending for a second longer. Benson married Pam and became the park owner after Mr. Maillard's death. Think about that trajectory. The man who spent 8 seasons screaming about the park being destroyed, about budgets being wasted, about these idiots who couldn't do a simple task. He ended up being the one who inherited the whole thing, and he kept it going. He preserved the place that Maillard built for Pops. He maintained the legacy. Every time Benson yelled about the park, it wasn't just frustration, it was love. He cared about this place more than anyone except Maillard himself. And in the end, the park was his. The thing he'd been protecting all along. That was always his destiny. He just didn't know it. The 5 cats and a pig detail is also perfect, by the way. Of course Benson adopted 5 cats and a pig. Of course he did. The man couldn't control his employees, but he could give a loving home to animals. There's a beautiful irony there that I think the writers intended. And Mordecai. Let's talk about Mordecai's ending, because it's the one that surprised people the most, and I think it's the one that says the most about what the show was trying to say. Mordecai doesn't end up with Margaret. He doesn't end up with CJ. After everything, the years of pining, the heartbreak, the love triangles, the missed connections and bad timing, Mordecai ends up with someone we've never met. Her name is Steph. She's a bat. They met at an art gallery where they were both showing their work because Mordecai became a professional artist, a painter. They got married and had 3 children, Blue Jay and Bat hybrids. And I know some fans were disappointed by that. After all that time with Margaret, he ends up with some random character we see for 30 seconds. But I think that misses the point entirely. The point is that Mordecai had to become someone new to find the right person. He couldn't end up with Margaret because their relationship was defined by his immaturity, by the version of himself that couldn't ask her out, couldn't communicate, couldn't be present. He couldn't end up with CJ because that relationship was a rebound built on his inability to process loss. He needed to become the person who would meet someone at an art gallery, someone who had done the work, someone who had figured out who he was on his own. And then, and only then, could he have a real, healthy, lasting partnership. That's the most mature message a show about a Blue Jay slacker could possibly deliver. You don't find love by chasing it. You find it by becoming someone worth loving. And sometimes that means the great love of your life is someone you haven't met yet. Someone who's out there, waiting for the version of you that you haven't become yet. And Quintel confirmed this was intentional, by the way. In interviews after the finale, he talked about how Mordecai's ending was specifically designed to show that your 20s don't define your 30s. That the people you date in your 20s, the relationships that consume your entire world at that age, they're not necessarily the relationships that last. Sometimes they're just practice, learning experiences, steps on the path to becoming someone who's ready for a real partnership. And that's a hard thing to say about characters your audience has shipped for years. But Quintel said it, and the show stands behind it. I think about how many people watched that finale and felt personally attacked by Mordecai, ending up with a stranger. And then I think about how many of those same people, 5 or 10 years later, ended up in relationships with someone they hadn't met yet at the time they watched that finale. Life has a way of proving fiction right. The partners who matter most are often the ones you can't even imagine yet. Because you're not the person who meets them yet. You're still becoming. At the 25-year reunion, the park crew gathers one more time. They're older now. Mordecai and Rigby are 57. They stand before a statue of Pops, erected in the park, right next to a new statue of Mr. Maillard, who has also passed away. The man who found a baby in an asteroid and built a whole park to keep him safe, honored alongside the baby who grew up to save the universe. And the crew takes a photo together, all of them, with their families, in the park where it all started. And Mordecai and Rigby, standing there as middle-aged men with gray in their feathers and fur, look at Pop's statue and they remember. They remember everything. Every dumb adventure, every escalated crisis, every trip to the moon, every rap battle, every omelet challenge. They remember their friend, who was the kindest person any of them ever knew, and who proved that kindness was the most powerful force in the universe. I'm going to take a second here, because I've been talking for a long time, and I want to make sure I'm saying this clearly. Regular Show is about time. It's about the fact that time moves in one direction, and the person you are at the beginning isn't the person you'll be at the end, and the people you love won't always be there. It's about the specific fear of being in your 20s and knowing that this period, this golden, irresponsible, consequence-free period, is going to end. The park is going to close. The job is going to change. Your friends are going to get married and have kids and move away. And you can either spend your time fighting that, slacking off, avoiding responsibility, pretending nothing changes, or you can do the terrifying, necessary work of growing up. Every character in Regular Show represents a different response to that challenge. Mordecai takes too long, but eventually figures it out. Rigby fights it harder than anyone, but transforms the most. Benson was already grown up, but had to learn that growing up doesn't mean giving up on joy. Muscle Man hid his depth behind jokes until love forced him to be real. Skips made the choice centuries ago and lives with it daily. And Pops never grew up in the traditional sense. He stayed innocent, stayed kind, stayed good, and that innocence was what saved everyone. And can I just say something about the visual storytelling of the reunion scene? The characters are older. The animators aged them deliberately. Mordecai has lines on his face. Rigby has gray fur. Muscle Man's hair is thinning. They look like people in their late 50s. And they're standing in the same park, next to the same house, on the same grass. Everything has changed. And nothing has changed. The park is the same. They're different. And that contrast between the permanence of place and the impermanence of people is the whole show distilled into a single image. There's also a callback here that I want to highlight. Remember in the very first episode, The Power, when Mordecai and Rigby send Skips to the moon with a magical keyboard? That was the first escalation. The first time the show said, this is what we are. We take normal things and make them cosmic. And now, in the final scene, the characters are looking at a statue in the park. No moon, no keyboard, no supernatural chaos. Just people, remembering. The show started with escalation and ended with stillness. It started with a trip to the moon and ended with standing still. That's poetry. The show aired its final episode on January 16th, 2017. 244 episodes, 8 seasons, 6 Emmy nominations, 1 win for Excellent, 7 Annie Award nominations, 3 British Academy Children's Award nominations, a movie, a legacy that includes inspiring countless animators, writers, and storytellers who saw what Quintel did and thought, I can be honest about my life and my work. I can make something weird and personal, and it can matter. After Regular Show, Quintel created Close Enough for HBO Max. It premiered July 9th, 2020, and it was essentially Regular Show's spiritual successor, aged up. The characters were in their 30s now, dealing with marriage, parenthood, mortgages, the chaos of adult life. Quintel said that Regular Show was about what he was like in college and having a job and hanging out with buddies. But by the time it ended, he'd changed. He was older, and Close Enough was about that older person. Close Enough ran for 3 seasons before HBO Max canceled it in 2022 and then, in a move that still makes me angry, removed it from the platform entirely. Just erased it. Gone. A show with a perfect first season score on Rotten Tomatoes, wiped from existence by corporate indifference. The Warner Brothers Discovery merger gutted HBO Max's animation slate, and Close Enough was one of the casualties. Shows vanishing from streaming platforms is one of the defining tragedies of our current media era, and Quintel's show got the worst of it. But that's a rant for another night. What I do want to say about Close Enough is that it proved Quintel could grow. He wasn't a one-trick pony. He took the sensibility he'd developed on Regular Show, the escalation, the sincerity, the balance of comedy and heart, and applied it to the anxieties of adulthood. Paying rent, raising a kid, maintaining a marriage, dealing with your in-laws, literally living in a closet in your apartment. Close Enough was Regular Show for people who'd aged out of Regular Show's demographic, but still felt the same confusion and fear about their lives. And the fact that it got pulled from streaming doesn't diminish what it achieved. It just makes me sad. Now let me also acknowledge Regular Show's impact on the animation industry more broadly, because I don't think we talk about this enough. Quintel proved that you could build a show around a specific personal experience, being a 20-something slacker in a dead-end job, and make it universal. He proved that adult themes could live in a kid's show without being inappropriate. He proved that animation didn't need to be either for children or for adults. It could be for everyone simultaneously. And he did it with a style that was deceptively simple, with characters that looked like they were drawn on a napkin. The generation of animators who grew up watching Regular Show are now making their own shows, and you can see the influence everywhere. The sincerity, the willingness to let cartoon characters feel real things, the balance of absurdity and emotion, the rejection of ironic distance in favor of genuine connection. That's Quintel's legacy. Not just 8 seasons in a movie, but a philosophical approach to animated storytelling that says, the audience is smart enough to handle complexity. Trust them. And then, in 2024, at the Annecy Animation Film Festival, the announcement came. Regular Show is coming back. Regular Show, The Lost Tapes. Premiering May 11th, 2026 on Cartoon Network. 44 episodes. Quintel returning as creator and executive producer. The original cast reprising their roles. And the concept is smart. These aren't continuation episodes that undo the finale. They're lost episodes. New adventures set during the original run's timeline, presented as stories that happened, but we never saw. It's a way to go back to the park without breaking the promise of that final episode, without cheapening Pop's sacrifice or the 25-year flash forward. Sean Seeley serves as executive producer alongside Quintel and Sam Register, and the original cast is returning. All of them. Quintel as Mordecai, Salyers as Rigby, Marin as Benson, Pops and Muscle Man, Hamill as Skips. The gang is back. And knowing that these are lost stories, adventures we missed the first time around, slotted into the timeline we already know, gives them a bittersweet quality before we've even seen a single frame. We know how it ends. We know Pops doesn't make it. We know the park eventually goes to space. And watching these new episodes with that knowledge will be like looking at old photographs of someone you've lost. Every smile more precious, because you know what comes next. I think about that a lot. About how the best endings are the ones you don't undo. Pops is gone. The flash forward happened. Everyone grew up. And now, with the lost tapes, we get to visit one more time without pretending they didn't. We get to go back to the park knowing what we know. And every laugh will have a little more weight because we know where it all ends. It's like visiting your old college campus after you've graduated and built a career and started a family. The buildings are the same, but you're different. And the nostalgia isn't for the buildings. It's for the version of yourself who walked those halls without knowing what was coming. That's what the Lost Tapes promises. Not a return to innocence, but a visit with full awareness. We'll laugh at Mordecai and Rigby's antics, but we'll know that Mordecai becomes a painter who marries a bat, and Rigby becomes a husband and father of 2. We'll see Pops being sweet, and we'll know he saves the universe. We'll see Benson yelling, and we'll know he inherits the park. Every moment will be double-coded, present and future, comedy and elegy. I'm looking forward to it more than I can articulate. May 11th, 2026. Mark your calendars. Or don't. You'll know when it's here. The internet will remind you. And look, I want to address something directly before we wrap up. The question of whether Regular Show is a kid's show, because I've been talking about this cartoon for a very long time now, and I've been discussing themes of heartbreak, existential dread, the cosmic meaninglessness of repeating cycles, the terror of growing up, the death of a beloved character. These are not the concerns of a children's program. And yet the show aired at 8:15 p.m. on Cartoon Network, rated TV-PG, with a target demo of 6 to 14. I think the answer is that Regular Show is a kids' show that refuses to be limited by the category. Like the best Pixar films, like Avatar, The Last Airbender, like Gravity Falls and Adventure Time, it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Kids watch it for the wacky escalations, the cool action sequences, the funny catchphrases. Teenagers watch it for the relationship drama and the cultural references. Adults watch it for the thematic depth, the existential undertones, the achingly accurate portrayal of what it feels like to be lost in your 20s. Everyone gets something. Nobody is talked down to. That's the magic of the show, and it's the reason we're still talking about it in 2026, nearly a decade after it ended. I've been talking for a while now, and if you're still here, if you've been lying in the dark, listening to me trace the complete story of a blue jay, a raccoon, and their friends through 8 seasons of increasingly emotional chaos, then I think you understand why this show matters. Not because of the supernatural escalation, though that's amazing. Not because of the 80s references, though those are deeply charming. But because Regular Show told the truth about what it's like to be alive during the years when you're figuring out who you're going to be. It told the truth about friendship, about love, about loss, about the terror and beauty of growing up. And it did it all through a cartoon about 2 guys who couldn't set up chairs. Let me do one more callback. In Dawn, the season 1 episode about Rigby and his brother, Rigby finally gives Dawn sugar, their family's way of showing love. That's episode 10 of the entire series. And in the finale, 25 years into the future, Rigby has a family of his own. 2 daughters. He's giving love, receiving love, living in love. The guy who couldn't hug his own brother in season 1 built a family by season 8. That's 7 years of storytelling to get from one hug to a whole life. And if you don't think a cartoon about a raccoon can make that arc feel earned and real and beautiful, then you haven't been watching closely enough. One more. In The Power, the very first episode, Mordecai and Rigby accidentally send Skips to the moon. It's a panic. It's a crisis. They have to fix it. And in the finale, the entire park goes to space. Not by accident, but by choice. The characters who were terrified of the moon in episode 1 chose to face the universe in the final season. They grew from people who panicked at the unknown into people who confronted it willingly. That's the arc. That's the whole show in 2 scenes. Remember what I said at the beginning? That Regular Show watched me grow up? I think that's why the finale hit so hard. Because by the time Pops flew into the sun, I wasn't the same person who'd watched The Power in 2010. I'd made choices. I'd lost people. I'd grown up. Or at least started to. And the show knew. The show had been tracking alongside me the whole time, matching my confusion with Mordecai's, my stubbornness with Rigby's, my anger with Benson's, my sadness with Skip's. And when it ended, it wasn't just saying goodbye to characters. It was marking a passage, a moment where one version of your life ends and another begins. That's what great stories do. They don't just entertain you. They timestamp who you were when you watched them. And years later, when you go back, you can measure the distance between then and now, between who you were and who you've become. I think a lot about why Regular Show resonates with people who are no longer in their 20s, why it still hits when you're 30, 35, 40. And I think it's because the feelings it captures, the fear of growing up, the grief of letting go, the slow acceptance that your life is changing whether you want it to or not, those feelings don't go away. They just wear different clothes. At 23, you're afraid of getting a real job. At 33, you're afraid of becoming someone you don't recognize. At 43, you're afraid of the years going by too fast. The specifics change, but the underlying anxiety is the same. Time is passing, and I'm not sure I'm spending it right. Regular Show understood that anxiety better than almost any piece of media I've encountered. And it offered a response that wasn't, "Don't worry about it," or "Everything will be fine." Its response was, "Yeah, it's scary. Growing up is terrifying. Losing people is devastating. Changing is hard, but you do it anyway. You set up the chairs. You eat the omelet. You go back to school. You propose to the woman you love. You hug the brother who wants to destroy you. You do the hard thing, the scary thing, the thing that requires you to be more than you thought you could be. And then you keep going. That's the show. That's what 8 seasons and 244 episodes add up to. Do the hard thing, keep going, and be kind along the way. So here's what I'll leave you with. The universe resets every 14 billion years. Existence begins again. Same patterns, same battles, same choices. But in this cycle, our cycle, the one where Mordecai and Rigby slacked off at a park and a lollipop man learned to hug his enemy, the pattern broke. Something new happened. And it happened because one person, in the face of infinite violence, chose kindness instead. I think about that when I can't sleep. I think about the fact that this stupid, brilliant, beautiful show about a park ended with a cosmic argument for gentleness. That the answer to destruction isn't more destruction. It's love. Even when love costs you everything, especially then. And I think about the fact that a show about slacking off ended by telling us that the most important thing you can do with your time is care. Care about your friends. Care about your work. Care about the people who depend on you. Care about the people who can't fight for themselves. Care enough to show up, to try, to fail, to try again. Care enough to hug someone when everything in the universe is telling you to fight. That's not a children's lesson. That's not a moral slapped onto the end of a cartoon. That's a philosophy. That's a way of living. And Regular Show spent 8 seasons, 244 episodes, and one movie building the case for it. One silly, escalated, beautiful episode at a time. If you can't sleep, well, that's what the next video is for, and the one after that. We've got plenty of nights ahead. Thank you for staying with me on this one. I mean it. These long videos, they don't work unless someone's listening. So thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about a show about a blue jay and a raccoon as much as I do. And if you want more of these, more long, late-night deep dives into the shows that shaped us, hit subscribe. I'll be here. Good night, and jolly good show. Good night, everyone. Sleep well.